Gotcha.
Alright, wait for it to go live. Alright, hello everyone, and welcome to what is not my usual weekly streaming session, but instead actually a rather, well, it's less scheduled and very impromptu. I am joined by my usual co-host, Cybernetic Pink Eye. Would you stop that?
Hello, everyone.
You don't need to do that. I don't care how extra you are. Anyway, welcome to this. And you may notice that my art stream is open today. My art program is open, as well as my art stream. I am going to be working on a set of adoptables. Now, I actually already have one completed, and I haven't even really posted them. So, I have made them available to patrons first. Basically, they get first dibs on anything that I'm going to be putting out. Once I get through that point, I'm going to be posting them publicly to Twitter and probably this site that I host character stuff on that's actually really, really good for adoptables. It's called Toy House. I might do DeviantArt, but I feel like the more that I spread myself out across multiple platforms with the advertising for it, the more difficult it's going to be to keep track of everything. But basically, the plan is to try and have some of these available. The overall theme that I've been going with so far is these are going to be Dungeons and Dragons adoptables. They're going to be themed around that, but the character designs can basically be used for any purposes. It doesn't have to be D&D. It can be personal fantasy story that you're writing, or whether you want to have a reference for a character, or something along those lines, or you need a creative jump start, or you just want to have a pretty character to look at. It honestly doesn't matter whatever reason you may have for wanting to adopt an adoptable. I'm obviously not the only one. This was something that I've been looking forward to potentially getting into at some point. And when I recently checked my bank account and noticed that I was very much getting close to going into the negatives, I was like, I might want to potentially move the whole selling things angle again, because, well, I do love doing commissions. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of biters on the regular. I have some people who do very consistently ask me or commission me for work. They ask me to do commission. No, it's a handful of people that when I say, hey, I'm opening commissions, they like to contribute, and I always appreciate that support. But I think that I would rather try and utilize the fact that I love creating multiple characters with multiple and hopefully unique designs. I thought, hey, people who want to have these on hand, who want to adopt them and then make them their own, that might be, it'll be admittedly lower pressure on me in terms of I get to create the look as opposed to follow what someone else wants me to make. I know that that's kind of selfish in that regard, but hey, Phoenix, welcome. So the idea is that I'm going to be working on these, and depending on how successful these things go, this might be a regular side hustle for me. But the thing is that I mentioned earlier that the patrons get first dibs, and the fact is that first set is already down by two. Two people have already purchased adoptables from the first set. You're still going to eventually be able to see them, because I'm going to be posting them, I'm going to be posting the adoptable sale basically to various social media, but two of them are already gone, and that's why I want to work on more, is so that I have more options for people to adopt from. I should finish swallowing before speaking. I've even actually decided on a theme for today, which isn't really much of a theme so much as it is I'm going to try and put two what is it? It's two opposite colors, so red, green, blue, orange, yellow, purple, and for the other two I'll figure something out. Maybe not necessarily opposite colors, um, but like contrasting of some kind. Basically, colors that you wouldn't necessarily inherently think go together. Because I think one of the ones that I thought of was pink and brown for a more warm, but maybe. Anyway, you'll see, I guess, when I actually get around to it. But I'm going to be working on these today, and like I said, because unfortunately my finances are a little bit on the tighter side as of right now, I would appreciate, and I'm not going to emphasize it too strongly, but if you see on screen, there is the coffee.com/mlorelei. If you want to toss something that way to help me make it through the rest of this month, I would really appreciate that. Otherwise, right as I say that, someone has tossed some money at me through coffee. Thank you.
Hell yeah.
Thank you, Alex.
Keep it coming, guys.
Hey. I know you're meaning that support. I just want to emphasize I appreciate that. I really do.
Yeah.
But if coffee and doing that right now is not quite what you want to wait for some of these adoptables to go public, I'm going to be making the first set available probably in the next couple of days. At which point I've been so far setting a price point of $15 per adoptable. If I do something that's more complex, I might bump the price up, or if I do something that is far more simplistic, I might bump it down. But given the kind of time that goes into making each of these, especially trying to be creative and unique and to offer something original for people to, incorporate into their character design or whatever they want to adopt for it, I feel like 15 is a pretty good middle price that's reasonable pricing, I hope, at the very least. And hopefully when you actually see what I have available, it will make sense, or make sense that it is priced at $15. And hey! Hello, Sarina Midori. Glad to have you. I know that you are at Ziwak. But, of course, you can't resist a stream where I am working on adoptables.
Yeah, that's Gab for you. If there's any cute involved, her spider senses start tingling.
Well, her adoptable senses, basically. She is the queen of adoptables, and part of the reason why I'm getting into it is because Gab is very much on the scene, and of course seeing her gush over adoptables and even making some of her own got me thinking, but maybe I could do the thing.
You see Serena Midori putting out original characters into the world. You are filled with determination.
I mean, yes. Alright, yeah, okay, that's the correct one. I also ended up, just last night, so last night I clicked on the Clip Studio giveaway thing. Of course, I've absolutely loved Laura's designs too. Yeah, well, she's one of the ones who bought one from the first set before it even went out. I can draw eyes, I promise. Anyway, where was my train of thought before I let myself get distracted? So I was logging into the Clip Studio thing, where they offer basically if you a login bonus where you get like Clippy points that you can use on their assets store. They offer them for free. I mean, there's a lot of free assets in the asset store that you don't have to spend a single point on or a single dollar on. But then they also have Clippy points that they have made available. They're relatively easy to get. So, for example, if you post an asset to their asset store, you can get Clippy points. And the login bonus gave you about 15 of them a day. I was logging into that last night, got the last 15, and decided to actually check out what they have in terms of assets. And I ended up getting a few new ones that I'm actually pretty happy with. May as well just fucking show off what I got while I'm here, right? Let's see. So, artificial. So, interestingly enough, one that I felt was going to be really appropriate, given that I do a lot of, D&D things on the side, would have been these wizard papers, which are basically, I mean, they can do a mix of, like, magic and just, like, handwritten things. So it creates this little cluster of papers that can be, like, scattered on a desk. And you can do just, like, the simple handwritten papers, or you can do more just, like, the magical glyph papers.
Yeah.
But the standard wizard papers has a mix of both, showing like notes and basically like a wizard that's been working on it. And so maybe you're telling me, well, this is useful if you're doing an overhead shot, but what if you wanted to do it at an angle? Well, I've got good news for you. One of the nice things about having this fucking program is that you can actually change the shape of the screen of the platform itself to put it at an angle. So that
I love how you're
now,
giving this brush the Billy Mays treatment.
look at that! Billy May's not here to tell you about this wonderful new brush that can actually give you the impression of a table. So, for example, imagine if I had a table here in the first place, but basically, imagine if I were good at perspective and you got to see, a fucking table that these papers were scattered on.
I mean, that is damn impressive.
There you go. That says a really wonky fucking table, but that's okay. It's a wizard. They don't make things right.
Yeah. Available for only 9 payments of $9.99.99.99.
Witchcraft, the power of adoptables shines within you. Okay. Anyway, just showing that off. I got a couple of other ones, but I may as well go back to what I said I was doing here to do.
Yes.
Which is to say, obviously, I think I've made it clear also that I have my own problem with D&D at this point, as if the fact that I have been doing, talking about Magic of the Mundane pretty much every week that I have been streaming, with the rare exceptions coming out. I also have a D&D campaign that I'm working on that I hope to be able to show you guys soon, but, that's been kind of put on the back burner while I've worked on a couple of other things. Let's see. Am I doing this right? It's okay. I'm not. I'm not good with life.
I mean, that's a mood.
But seriously, that's cool. Yeah, I love the I love the brushes that you can get absolutely for free. Like those ones were just free. Like literally something that people put time and effort into that, and they're making it available completely for free.
Yeah.
A lot of the creative processes, I may not necessarily have a full idea in mind when I start doing these, so I try to think of a mood that's going to be appropriate to the pose that I have set up ahead of time. So, like, these are all bases that I have drawn, and basically all adoptables are going to be largely following this format. But I try to put things to the appropriate mood as I have them. Try to put things in a creative way, but I gave myself, I think, a pretty decent head start by coming up with several different tones, I suppose.
Oh, yeah.
Like overall emotional tones.
Got some good flavor variety here.
Yeah.
I mean, right off the bat, this strikes me as an "I am here" character.
Well, yeah. Hands on hips and everything.
Yes.
One of the nice things about working digitally is that if I do something that's at the wrong size or at the wrong angle, I don't have to continuously adjust. I don't have to erase and redo something every time.
Control Z sure as hell is a savior, isn't it?
Well, there's that, and there's also being able to enlarge in and big in and shrink in all sorts of things digitally. Hello, Gold, and that character is doing the people's eyebrow that The Rock does.
Yeah.
You know, the DreamWorks face.
Yeah.
Alright, I think that's going to work for that. So let's see. And I love making and using my own bases too, so I feel that. Yep. Again, I will say I will happily also promote the hell out of out of Gab's adoptables.
Well, abso-fucking-lutely.
She does a fantastic
Goddamn
job
Gab.
with them.
Yeah.
And I don't want to end up just emulating what I was first doing for all of this. You're a quiet person today, Griffin, which is really strange.
Yeah. I mean, I will admit to not exactly being I mean, I'm relatively new to the concept of adoptables even. It took me the longest time and several explanations from several people for me to fully understand the basics of it. So, it's just... It's a learning process for me, and I find it endlessly fascinating.
I'm still new to it myself. I've seen it listed here and there, and I've been kind of confused. Like, I mean, if you want to make a character, why not design it yourself? And I realized that, like,
Yeah.
a lot of people get ideas based on being given at least some sort of base to work off of.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have an idea for a character, but you don't have the visuals, or maybe the visuals inform an idea for a character that you want to write about, or, you know.
Yeah, and again, for me, it just the concept like, oh, these designs are for sale. Is like, okay, but what if I just hover the cursor, right click, and save that image onto my computer?
You don't own it, though.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the other part of that. Yeah, you're right. That technically, there's always going to be the risk that there's going to be people who are out there who are going to try and capitalize on this sort of thing for themselves. That's unfortunately a little bit inevitable, but the good thing with adoptables is that if you go the legit route and actually pay for it, the creator of that image basically is giving you full permission to use that image. You know, you don't necessarily have to, like, it depends on the creator. Sometimes they'll make it available without having to credit them. I'm kind of of that mind where, like, once you buy it from me, you are paying for the rights to use it kind of indefinitely and however you please. As much as I would appreciate credit being given, obviously that's not a requirement for me. Some people do require at least some sort of attribution when you're actually posting it or using it places like design by, etc. Always be sure to read the terms of engagement whenever you adopt something from someone or whenever you use art from some other source.
Yeah.
Because people have different rules for how they lease out their creations. And some people are just absolutely, once you pay for it, it's yours. Other people are very much of the mind of, like, it's my creation, I'm just letting you use it. Like, leasing in the sense of you have to, like, you have it only on the basis of.
Yeah.
Selling...
I think
Sorry.
the thing I found most confusing at the time was, like, it seemed like a lot of this was essentially working off the honor system.
I mean...
In terms of, like, what is and isn't allowed.
Look, everything that is on the internet is always going to have some degree of someone is going to try and take advantage of the system, because that's what happens under capitalism, and that's just all in general human behavior.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at a lot of this. We should do a collab sometime, says Gab, and I absolutely agree.
Yes.
Well, if you steal someone's work, you have to prove that it's yours at some point in the future. It wouldn't end well. I mean, yeah. Gab continues with selling designs isn't not unlike just doing commissions. There's always a threat of someone just stealing and using the art. The draw of adoptables too depends on the art itself, like the artist's style and the quality play a factor. If it is a literal sale at the end, or it is a literal sale at the end of the day, yes.
Right.
So there's always going to be people who take advantage of it. There's always going to be people who, like, you know, are not necessarily going to honor their agreements. That's inevitable. That's an inevitability, especially in a culture that devalues the individual artist and is like, well, if you put it on the internet, you know, you just expect people to, you should expect people to just kind of take it for themselves, because, you know, why should they do what you tell them to do? And it's like, well, because I'm asking. And I can't reasonably expect that in an entire internet that there's not going to be people who don't just take things for themselves and then decide from there whether or not they're actually going to cooperate with what other people are doing, with what people say that they want to do. Someone could pay for it, and they've decided they've already paid for it, and There's nothing that the original creator can do about it. They may decide that for themselves. That's always a possibility.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is that there are a lot more people out there, I find, that are willing to legitimately pay for these things and legitimately follow through on whatever their part of the agreement is. A lot of people are a lot more interested in, like, honoring the fact that someone basically went through the design process for them. Oh yes, and as Gab says, I also see blacklisted artists and buyers a lot too, so it's not wrong. So he's not wrong that it happens, but more people will hold thieves accountable within the community. Yes, exactly. Basically, if you are, so for example, there are some people who are artists who create these things as well, who either steal the designs from other people and try to sell them like as if they're the ones who created it, which is a problem. There are the, customers who don't, or the people out there who just kind of steal whatever was made and, they just use it however they like. However, as Gab says, if there's an artist, for example, that sells the same design to multiple people, when the whole point of being able to adopt the design is that you get sole rights to it, that person is going to likely find themselves, again, blacklisted within the community. So they're not going to have the chance to sell the same thing multiple times because people are going to be like, yeah, and how do I know that when I spend money with you, I'm actually going to get to keep this?
I mean, that's just it. I mean, blacklisting aside, like, it seems like a big, like, potential problem with this is the fact that the original artist holds, in some cases, all the control, and in other cases, none. It's, like, sort of the same issue I've found with, like, supporting people on Patreon, where, like, it can go either way. Either, like, well, it does go either way. Like,
so,
both the
question,
creator...
Griffin, what purpose does it serve in the middle of my trying to sell the concept of adoptables for you to immediately start shedding doubt on whether or not it's a good idea?
I'm not trying to shed doubt on it. I'm saying that it's an interesting field with both pros and cons.
That's not what you said. There's its pros and cons. There's always going to be inherent risk with a lot of these things, and that in itself does kind of suck. I'm not going to say that people are... I'm not going to say that there aren't people who take advantage of that there aren't people who take advantage of the system. Obviously, there are always going to be people who take advantage of any system. As soon as you put a video out on the internet, you're always going to run the risk of someone deciding to take that and host that on their own channel. You always run the risk of putting effort out into the world only to see someone else take credit for it and try to take it away from you or something along those lines. Art is especially guilty of this, but that's just it. Any art that you do online is going to fall victim to the same. There's always the risk. There's always a risk with this kind of thing. The point is not to focus on the risks, but to do what you can to minimize the risk and to take responsibility for certain things and to rely on the people who are playing by the rules to try and help kind of enforce that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And all I was going to say, and I admittedly was going about it in a roundabout way, was do your research when it comes to these things. Make sure that if you are going about, looking for adoptables, that you find someone who is, does have a good reputation within the community and is reliable in terms of consistency and, paying up their end of things.
Yeah. Do your research. Try to do what you can to, again, minimize the risk in terms of these things. Try to follow word of mouth because you're going to find a lot of people that way, honestly. There's a lot of people who are like, yeah, I liked working with this person, or yeah, this person sold me, this image and they sold me this design and it ended up working really good. So, I highly support this person.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can trust me, right, guys? I'm totally a trustworthy person who would never take... I say that sarcastically, but I do hope that at this point I've established that I'm a somewhat trustworthy person.
I mean, I will say I can vouch for that at this point, having known you for as long as I have.
Yeah, but there's the other part of it, too. You're also technically, in a way, in business with me.
I mean, somewhat. But again, 4 years goes a long way.
God... Has it been that long?
Just about, yeah. This next month.
Exchange of
Or
good. If there's proof of it, it's still a sale. Yeah. There's
actually,
still a
no, I
sale
think
that
it's been this
happens.
month.
What?
I think it's been this month that we've known each other for 4 years.
I'm trying to think, but somewhere along those lines. I trust Laura, but I do trust Griffin. But do I trust Griffin? You shouldn't trust Griffin.
You should not act by any means. Especially not with what I've got in the works.
What are you doing?
I'm just saying. I mean, again, my flagship series is called In My Unpopular Opinion, and I think this next one is going to be the one that actually lives up to the name.
You keep saying that.
I know, and I keep waiting for the bomb to go off.
Stop. Just assume the answer is yes, Midori. Yes, well. I love. There's so many different ways to refer to you, Serena Midori, if that is your real name.
Alias Midori.
But there's so many different names. But yeah, just like most people end up calling her Serena from what I've seen. Midori is also another thing that comes up sometimes. But please call me Midori. Oh my god, yes.
God, I forgot about that whole conversation.
But
My word.
and of course I just know this person as Gab, but
Yes.
I've also known I've known her for about that amount of time. No, I would have met it's actually almost been about 5 years at this point. Because Undertale came out 5 years ago. And it wasn't too long after that I got cast in my first official Undertale-related project. Although I say official, nothing ever really came of it. That's kind of the problem.
Yeah.
Nothing ended up coming out of that first one. Or the next couple of ones that I ended up auditioning for. The only one that really took off was the Undertale the musical one, but that in itself was kind of a unique circumstance, all things considered.
Mm-hmm.
You forgot to add Sailor Moon to that name. Serena, Ms. Midori, etc. Yeah.
Next time we're on call, I'm just calling Gab Usagi.
Usagi-chan! By the way, random bit of trivia out there for you. The main character of Sailor Moon, obviously her name is Usagi. Her name is actually Tsukino Usagi, if you look by the Japanese naming structure, because it's in English, the way that we have the individual
Surname
names.
And given name.
Yeah, given name first and surname secondly. They do it surname first and then given name secondly. So the name Tsuki no Usagi literally means bunny of the moon. So, I mean, if there was ever any doubt that she was ever going to be Sailor Moon, her name is literally a pun.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Let's see. I'm trying to think of how to make this somewhat asymmetrical but still fit.
I mean, I think you were on the right track with having like one side of it like a little shorter, but fitting into it, sort of like a weird extra lab coat.
Yeah.
Like somewhat shorter and then just kind of folding in behind.
Silly Japan, rabbits don't live on the moon. Oh, Japan! I actually didn't get Serena from Sailor Moon, funnily enough. I never watched it that much as a kid. I didn't either. I only actually started watching any part of it, like, fairly well into adulthood.
Yeah, I think I watched a little bit of it because my sister had some of it. I think she had a couple comics, and I remember... God, because I remember, like, one of my biggest exposures to anime was occasional visits to Blockbuster. And I think one of the Sailor Moon movies was at Blockbuster, and I rented it one time.
That also works.
Yeah. because I think my initial main introduction to anime was, well, Pokemon, and other than that, I'm trying to think of. I mean, there are the few things that they had on fucking Fox Kids and the like, but yeah, because they had like the 4Kids dubs of a lot of shows. God, I think that's technically, at least I'm pretty sure it's one of the ways I find out about Final Fantasy, because they had that Legend of the Crystals anime movie.
I don't remember what you're talking about exactly, but
Yeah.
sorry, I'm trying to be creative as well as participating in conversation as well as occasionally checking the chat.
Yeah. I'm used to being ignored by you at this point. Oh, God.
Keep it up
But-
and I can do it more.
Uh-huh. Oh, God. But, yeah, Blockbuster was a big part of how I discovered, like, more and more about anime. I think outside of what they would show on, the Fox box and whatnot.
The Fox box?
It was one of those Saturday morning lineup things, like for kids on Fox. They had fucking Americanized titles of weird fucking anime like Ultimate Muscle, Fighting Foodons. I think they also had stuff like they had Card Captor Sakura.
Card captors.
Yeah, they just called it Card Captors. They had Pokemon. I forget if Yu-Gi-Oh was out by that point, but I remember this big fucking stink that everyone was making about it. It was in like some of the kids magazines that were circulating at the time. It was like, could this be the thing that like outperforms Pokemon? And it just shows Yu-Gi. Like,
right. So
it's
to
like, maybe not.
So to answer the question in chat, Phoenix, is that I take it that superhero that Laura's drawing didn't get the memo about no capes. Again, this isn't going to be superhero based. I mean, there's going to be a little bit of that too, I suppose. But like, first of all, this isn't a cape. It's actually a sleeveless, I guess, coat in a way. But the concept behind it is actually going, like I said before, it's going to be D&D based, as opposed to. Like, that's kind of... I mean, it doesn't have to be D&D based in the end. You can use it for a superhero thing, but that's kind of where I'm starting in terms of the overall theming of this.
Yeah.
Cloak is kind of the right term. It's a type of coat of some kind anyway.
Yeah. I'm getting some fucking Colress vibes from this dude.
I'm sorry, what vibes?
He's a scientist character from, like, the Pokemon games. And
okay, because you also... I didn't hear what you said specifically, because you said it sounded like horse to me.
Okay, well, maybe I'll try turning off my fan, see if that helps.
No, try enunciating.
All right, well, come for my throat, why don't you?
I will.
All right, but yeah, I get some vibes from a couple other characters I've seen to that effect. Definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that works. Okay. So the nice thing with these designs too is that I could show like side designs as well as front-facing designs for these boots that are being worn.
Yeah.
So you can see it somewhat in action from a different angle. That way I don't have to do a full turnaround in order for people to actually see what's being represented here. Yeah, fantasy-esque design. So, like, folks can do kind of, like... Again, it can be fantasy, or maybe this could be, like, a Blade Runner kind of thing, where it's sci-fi dystopian or something like that.
Yeah.
I will also say, while I do tend to, like, gender my eye shapes a little bit, just by the way that I do them, they also don't necessarily have to be, like, a gendered thing. Like, if you saw, like, a male character more than a female, or a female character more than a male, or something androgynous, or something that's non-binary, you can do it either way. Like, I ultimately don't get a say on what you use a character design for. No adoptable person really... I mean, I suppose... Like, I don't want to say that, like, do whatever you want, because some people out there can kind of take that in the wrongest possible direction. And while I can't really... if someone decides to do something lewd with a design that I have created... I can't necessarily inherently stop them from doing that. Yeah. I'm just going to call these characters they, them until proven otherwise. That's perfectly fine, as a matter of fact. Yeah. I usually tend to default to they, them as well when it comes to these character designs. Mm-hmm. But I can't stop someone from doing something lewd. I'm not going to necessarily, like, go for the throat if someone decides that they're going to do that. But that's usually I handle my adopts too. I usually, it's like, I don't know about necessarily having my name attached to certain things. But, like, again, I'm selling them, so, like, people can do what they want with them.
Yeah.
The whole point is to offer someone creative. And I will say this is probably not the most apt comparison to make with all of this, but I do feel like I finally kind of understand things like, card game trading and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. The whole idea, because you can... So here's another thing that I have even seen when it comes to adoptables. Someone will buy an adoptable, and then maybe they can even trade that as, like, say, collateral towards another adoptable, or trading them out for a different adoptable that someone else has, or just in general passing them on to someone else to be able to use. Everyone has their own way of going about how to handle these adoptables, and if you decide that you want to, pass it on to someone else, the main thing that I would request in that instance is that if you're going to sell it again, like, that's kind of poor etiquette. I can't necessarily stop that, but I will say that's technically kind of an option, but I will say that if you break obvious etiquette for something like that, that's probably a good way to get yourself blacklisted in a different way. Like, if people know that you're just going to turn around and sell their designs to someone else, they may not be willing to sell you their designs in the future. But I do know that a lot of people do end up, like, trading or gifting adoptable designs. Trading, swapping, reselling are all things that people do. So it's probably not going to get you blacklisted. What if someone sells the project and then gives you a percentage of the profit? Again, that's not required. Not at all, as a matter of fact. I can't demand any kind of payment for something once you've already paid for it. Never resell above the paid-for price unless you provide more art for said character. So that's a good rule in mind to keep in mind, as Serena Midori has pointed out. If you buy something for, say, $15, and then you sell it for $20 or $25, if you've not added something to the original value, then you are, in a way, shortchanging the original creator of that design, of that adoptable. There's always going to be people who try to take advantage of such a system, but, like, try not to be that person who takes advantage of such a system in place.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty good there. Alright, what do you say we give this adoptable hair?
I think that sounds like a good idea.
In fact, let's see. Do a pretty simple design, I think, for this.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. Everyone loves a tiefling.
Yeah. I'm feeling faux hawk.
I didn't ask your opinion, sir.
You hardly do.
Why are you sighing? I have to put up with you. Why are you sighing?
I have to put up with me. More than you.
Sometimes people will buy designs they love, but then realize later they don't feel the same, or someone else wants it more. So I usually have no issue with reselling, though my introduction was gems. Yes. So that was me quoting Gab there.
Yeah.
And one of the earliest adoptables that I remember seeing her mention were gemsonas, or Steven Universe gems, basically, which are always sold for cheap and made in large batches, so trading and reselling was rampant. Yeah, because that's just sort of a thing that happens. So anyway, everyone loves a tiefling, so I may as well make this one a tiefling. It kind of even fits somewhat with the aesthetic.
Yeah?
I don't like that mouth. I get rid of that mouth.
Don't dress like that. Are we gonna go movie Deadpool with this and just have it sealed shut?
No.
God, that's a DreamWorks mouth.
I promise I know how to art, guys. This is one of the things about the creative process, is that sometimes an artist will commit to one thing and then halfway through go like, wait a second. I don't like that. Scrap it. Do it over.
Yeah. Like, this is the expression of, like, Shonen Pro Tag, I'm about to pull the trap card on your ass.
Can you stop thinking about Yu-Gi-Oh! Then for like 10 seconds, maybe?
Were it so easy.
Everyone loves a tiefling, and Jester is proof of that. I bet Jay would buy one of your designs too. Yeah, that sounds about right.
That checks.
I still look forward to the next time, perhaps, that Timur pops up in our campaign.
Hell yeah. He's a bean.
I feel more than a little bit artistically stymied today, which is unfortunate. I also did no warm-up, either.
Ah.
So, like, I'm just kind of starting very, very dry. So, tip for all you artists out there, be sure that you warm up by doing warm-up sketches before you actually start trying to do the real art that you plan on doing. There we go. That's the face I was looking for. Maybe try a warm-up after this one. Griffin, can you keep thinking about Yu-Gi-Oh, please? Look, don't encourage him.
Yeah. I mean, I'll even say there, I'm not even the biggest fan of Yu-Gi-Oh! I honestly don't think I've thought about Yu-Gi-Oh! In a good couple years or so. It's an inherent gift I have. Like, whatever will instill the greatest amount of cringe and shame from my peers just sort of manifests itself from my brain to my mouth with no real traffic in between.
Alright, let's see. Go for a classic little fringe here.
Are you giving him a bowl cut?
No.
Because I was going to say, I'm all for a tiefling with a bowl cut.
No, it's not a bowl cut.
Alright.
It's bangs.
That's
not even Griffin can stop Griffin. That's true.
Truer words have never been spoken.
Okay.
Like, again, this is the expression of, I'm going to shit in your breakfast cereal and you'll still love me.
I mean, that's how most animals work, really.
Yeah.
Let's see. Little poke of the ear, I think. Little tiny tip.
Yeah. Digging the hair loopies.
So, please don't shit on my breakfast, dude. You know, I mean, that's what we all really ask for. Like, honestly, it's like, look, you can do whatever you fucking want with the rest of my day, but just don't sit shit on my breakfast. Let me have the first 5 minutes of my day to myself.
That is a good, solid millennial morning goal. Just like, can I get through my cornflakes without anything? Yeah, at least give me that much. Who am I kidding? I can't remember the last time I've had breakfast.
I mean, I just had breakfast, but breakfast was bologna. Breakfast was bologna sandwiches.
Yeah. See, for me, quote-unquote breakfast was just some sun chips and spinach dip.
Okay, but that sounds good, though.
It was.
Okay. Alright. I'm digging. I'm vibing.
Yeah. Getting some Inuyasha vibes off this design now. Maybe it's the long flowing hair.
Leave Kikyo out of this.
Well, hopefully the sequel does.
Sequel?
Oh, you didn't hear? They're making a sequel series to Inuyasha starring their kids.
Well, it was one of the most popular anime series of all time.
Yeah, again, it seems to be there are two main trends in anime I find: isekai and like the sequel starring the kids.
Breakfast was a package of Weight Watcher cookies I had on my desk this morning. I mean, honestly. That tiefling is totally an anime character. Well, look, it's helped by the fact that I tend to draw in an anime style.
I mean, not helped by the heroic pose.
Little bit.
I mean, again, I will say I'm digging the design.
Yeah. Well, hopefully someone who wants to buy it will too.
And I'll even say the asymmetry of the coat works well with the race assignment here with the tiefling.
Now to add a tail.
Yeah.
Let's see. Do they want a tail? Make well, I suppose. Little bit of a tail. I can always flesh that out. Chipped tail. I never thought that was a bad thing. They look good. Yeah, no, I mean, look, if I don't want to give off the vibe of anime, I need to stop drawing in an anime style because, I mean, the way that I do eyes inherently is anime. The thing is that the main difference is also that I've worked a little bit of Disney into my style, which is where it looks the way that it does.
A little.
Do you want me to, like, fucking...
Hey, I'm not saying it's bad. Just saying if you're gonna own up to it all the way.
I don't... What part of it was I not owning up to?
That's fair. But yeah, I honestly legit dig, like seeing how much your style has, like, developed, like, since I've known you.
Well, it's been the same style the entire time, I'll say that much. I haven't grown that much in recent. I've kind of solidified. I've kind of got myself up to a point from where I was before I kind of gave up for a little while in terms of art. But I will say being able to draw consistently and regularly for Magic of the Mundane stuff has given me a lot of focus for being able, or giving me a lot more practice to get back into doing art properly. I think your style had that kind of Disney. Yeah, I did think your style had a kind of... Look, I grew up on Disney, alright?
Yeah.
So, Disney is always going to be a part of it. Let's see. I don't want to just do a repeat of what I did before. Again, I think I'm avoiding that pretty nicely. I will say also, like, for example, this was pointed out to me before, but say in examples where I have, like, this one over here, which shows the chest being covered with the posture. I usually will provide anything that does get obscured by the posture itself, like, as a separate thing. So, like, for example, the eyes being closed here, I am legitimately going to draw, like, what the eye and color, like, what that looks like when it's open so that people can see, this is, if they do ever open their eyes, and when they open their eyes, this is what you would get for that. Let's see. God damn it. So, one of the things that I did recently, and this was actually... So, you may remember the other night when we were watching Crazy Ex-Girlfriend with Gab and Jane, and then we were all like, yeah, it's getting pretty late, let's hang up for the night. I pulled Jane back into another call, because I was showing her stuff. I was showing her musical-related stuff. Some of it was related to Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, but we moved on to other musicals that she was not as familiar with. And that included Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, the 2004 one?
No.
Oh, good.
The not shitty one.
Good. I was gonna say.
Because, like, don't get me wrong, like, the 2004 movie does get some things right, but unfortunately it was so divorced from what the original musical debuted as, and also they did not cast Phantom very well, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I took her through a running of the song Notes / Prima Donna as well as Masquerade. And I just had Masquerade in my head. So, we all grew up with Disney. That's just... Well, not everyone did grow up with Disney, and when I say that I grew up with Disney, I mean that, like... I started singing because I loved The Little Mermaid as much as I did.
Yeah.
I started getting involved, like, it's influenced my art style, it influenced aspects of my personality, including my idealism. Like, I'm not gonna say that, like, Disney is unproblematic. Obviously it is, but there was a sense of optimism to what it was showing, us. Like, to the way that these characters, they handled their problems, there was optimism in how things would turn out in the end. And I feel like that needs to be more present in our storytelling today. I feel like that is something that we are sadly lacking. Do I want... No. So, a little bit lines to make myself remember later. What was I saying before I interrupted about the Disney thing?
God, that's a good question.
Well, it's not a good question. It's just what happens with ADHD. Oh, in terms of... Yeah, so... Okay, I was talking about how it influenced me, but then before that I was talking about something else. Alright, folks, don't ever develop ADHD, which, again, I say that tongue-in-cheek because it's... Trust me, it's not a choice that someone makes.
Yeah, duly noted.
It's really fun to have something in your head and to know what it is that you're going to say and then let yourself get distracted from it and then forget that you were ever going to say anything. Oh, I was talking about Phantom of the Opera. So, I was having the song Masquerade stuck in my head just now, so I was like, Masquerade, paper faces on parade, masquerade. Hide your face so the world will never find you. So the other thing that I grew up on was musicals. Phantom of the Opera actually being my first one there, actually, for a bit.
Yeah.
And let's see, actually. Kind of like this. See, this is, again, kind of the creative process going into how I design clothing, because I'm not in myself a fashion designer. But I have spent a lot of time thinking about what looks good with this character and their outfit. A lot of people who know me in my Modem campaign know how many times I have actually changed the way that my character in that campaign looks.
Yeah.
So. And a lot of this, honestly, is just kind of trial, because you don't want to just draw a straight dress, because that's not something that people want to pay for. If they want a straight dress, for example, there are plenty examples of that out there. You want to offer something that's a little bit on the easy, like, it's on the more complex side, so it's not just they do a Google image search and pull up, like, a random dress that's being sold.
Yes, which is why you draw a gay dress.
Well, yeah, but that goes without saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of, I'm still fucking loving episode 20 scene of because so to put things in perspective, Laura's recently been taking me through Owl House, and we just the other night finished up the 16th episode, which has a notable moment in it where the animation cakes up. I won't say more than that to avoid spoilers for anyone who wants to pick out the series, but it's well worth the watch. I think and this isn't a story spoiler, but I'll just say I think it has what I think is today one of the funniest visual gags I've seen in a modern cartoon, where this character sets to work cleaning up magical graffiti they painted on lockers, and they try getting out with a soaked mop, and it's just scoots away with every swap, and then the character tries to like swipe it all in one big swoosh, and all the graffiti combines to do "Mother, no!"
It caught him so off guard.
I was laughing for like 5 minutes straight. Because the idea of like this age-old graffiti that recognizes the person who like placed it or cast it rather, and just like the solemn like "I trusted you" sort of.
Yeah, and I was like, it's more like, "Mother, please don't kill me." Like that's the part of it that's so terrible. You know what I should probably do? I should save. That's an idea. But yeah, no, there are a lot of awesome visual gags and whatnot. And let's see. Why do your streams get privated for a few days after? The idea basically is to give people who actually come to the streams basically the benefit of being the first ones super privy to whatever it is that's going on. And, because I like releasing them on a different day. Yes, always save your work. Don't, because you never know if you're going to suddenly lose power or if your program may suddenly spontaneously decide to close on you. You really don't want to find hours of work suddenly go down the drain.
Yeah.
It's not fun.
It ain't great.
Alright, let's see. Alright, I think that's good for that. So, one of the fun things with doing these designs is I also have to figure out how clothing folds work, which honestly is another excuse for me to get into doing this. Because learning how to draw clothing folds by just forcing myself to draw them is only going to be beneficial to me. This is not looking very visually much like it makes sense. I can't just have something be gravity defying for some reason. I was going through my old adopts the other day, and one of the descriptions was me saying how I lost half a day of work from not saving, so yeah.
Oof. Oof.
Alright. How do I do Just gonna fucking quickly draw. That's the main frame of what I want to convey. Okay.
How do I do the age-old adage? My word.
No, my word. You don't get the words. I get all of the words. So good it happened forever ago, but you never forget those days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I could just go for another asymmetrical thing and have the sleeve not be extra.
But we all know better.
Well, if I can't draw it, then I can't sell it, you know? So then the actual flow of things is that's where that goes. Okay. So folks out there that are watching, just know that if you ever struggle with doing a particular art thing, that there are people out there who also have struggled with it for years.
Yeah.
And have to navigate having to do something that they aren't as familiar with. You could sell something that doesn't exist. I mean, pre-ordering. Look, so good. It's my word against your word. What I might do is just create some fucking weird as shit sleeves here. I mean, she is doing magic, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe.
All the thrills.
But yes, you can sell something that doesn't exist, and believe me, I have very strong opinions about the gaming industry and the way that it does precisely that.
Yeah.
I feel that there are far too many people out there that have kind of gotten complacent about, you know, what you can expect out of a video game company nowadays, because, honestly speaking, I remember being fucking young, and all of these things that they consider DLC now used to be unlockables within the game itself. Like, as long as you played the game long enough, you would get the chance to get the points and or you do certain achievements and get to unlock that material. But it was all part of the game. You still had to work for it, but now you didn't feel like you were being cut off of it financially. That if you were cut off from it, it was your own fault instead of not having enough money.
Yeah.
There used to be so many options that they would provide at the game for base cost for completely free. And let's be real here, the video game companies are not suffering. Individual developers maybe, but the companies that own a lot of these developers are not suffering. The individual.
So much so. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, the individual people who are actually working on the games, like, they may actually be in dire financial straits, but here's the other part of this. You buying the game, you pre-ordering the game, you buying the DLC does not help those people actually creating the game. They've already been contracted for the work that they put into those games, and as soon as the game releases, very often they're straight up fired. But they don't get to see any benefit, no additional benefit, if you buy more copies of the game. She could be holding a potion or a familiar, and I love your base poses for that reason.
Yeah.
You're not wrong, but I also don't want to, you know, obscure this. So I'm just going to have gravity defying frills in that instance. It's okay, it's fine, people will accept it.
Yeah.
I wanted to be really cheap with the frills, I have a way to do that. I try not to do that, but I have also, for my own sake, gone through and actually acquired.
A frill brush?
Yeah, I have a handful of them. So if I wanted to be super cheap, and let's see, actually, I probably could, in fact, be cheap and do this. And see, that would look better than anything I could actually draw. Perhaps some other day. In the meantime, I will do it all manually.
Yeah.
The nice thing about the brushes that you can get on these programs, actually, is that you can do things without stressing yourself out as much about them as you used to. Is that you can do these things to make little shortcuts. And a lot of people are like, oh, don't give yourself shortcuts, that's cheating. And it's like, okay, but if the alternative is that you never get any work done because you're so stressed out about whether or not you're actually creating something, like, better to take the shortcut and actually have the finished product actually release. It does help for reference if that helps too, but I also get it. Referencing is not a crime, everyone.
It really isn't.
In fact, reference. Get a reference. I say as I do this completely referencelessly.
I mean, you do have references, and it's the models.
That's not... Well, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's not the point I was quite making, but references in terms of, like, the frills that I was just doing.
Okay, that's fair. They are coming along.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to justify charging you guys an obscene amount of money for these things.
There is no justification under capitalism, but we can get a rough, guesstimate.
No. There is justification under capitalism, but that's just it. There's justification, not reason.
I mean, fair.
Let's see. The other sets of songs that I usually have stuck in my head are things like songs from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which if you have not watched that series, I highly recommend it. I am currently in the process, in fact, of taking Gab and our mutual friend Jane through that series. Not happy with that either. I'm not happy with taking them through Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
I was gonna say. Especially since it isn't season 3 yet.
Well, just because you have your own opinions about whether or not the show
I know.
gets good at a certain point doesn't mean that that's actually a universal experience.
I know. I mean, again, the first couple seasons do have several saving graces in the forms of, select characters.
Again, your opinion is noted. So it's the outside edge. I think that works for that. So this is just clearly Magical Girl.
Yeah, more than a bit.
I think that works for that. God, yes.
It's just like I both love and hate the fact that, like, for the rest of my life, I don't think I'll ever be able to hear, like, the term magical girl without also immediately thinking of the word contract.
Yeah, well, a lot of them do involve contracts.
Yeah, but you know exactly which kind of contract I'm talking about.
So what you're thinking of is Madoka, not just contract.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
It's forever changed how I look at magical girls.
I will say that I actually recently, it was funny that you mentioned Cardcaptor Sakura earlier, because I found that show on Netflix, and I was like, I haven't actually watched this since it was Card Captors back in, the days that it was being released in the United States. Initially, the English dub of it. And it's really funny, the fucking contrast. Like, if you actually see the Japanese version of it, you can get the real anime feel of it. Mm-hmm. Versus when they tried to Americanize it.
Yeah.
Where things like the obvious close relationship between Toya and Yuki were like, it's actually a romantic relationship canonically, I think, pretty much. And then in the American version, for example, there's a character that gets introduced later who's named Lee, who is supposed to have some kind of crush on Yuki. But of course they eliminate that in the American English dub of it. Make it into, he just has a lot, I think they do a lot to either cut it out or make it that he's just embarrassed or something like that.
Yeah. I will say, like, for as much as, like, 4Kids fucks with the actual content, the one thing I will always praise 4Kids for is their opening themes.
Oh yeah, I do actually like the Card Captors opening thing, the way that they did that. It actually sounded really cool, but when it also gets down to it, it was trying to market it more widely than just to little girls, which is what the shoujo market is supposed to be for.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Phoenix.
Again, they succeeded with that fucking song, and I don't give a fuck what anyone says. The pirate rap fucking bops. Okay.
The what rap?
The 4Kids opening theme for One Piece.
Oh yeah. But yes, the Card Captors, a mystic adventure. Like
it sounds like something fucking Danny Sexbang would sing.
Well, yeah. That kind of goes without saying.
Yeah.
Let's see. Actually,
I think I'm gonna listen to that real quick just to see if it holds up in my mind.
What, the Card Captors theme?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just it. I even just went back to listen to it again, but the intro to Cardcaptor Sakura is tonally completely different. But I actually only barely remember parts of Cardcaptors. I know the overall arcing story. I love how I'm doing a stream and you're like, I'm gonna go watch something else real quick. I can tell your investment in what I'm doing is super strong.
Sorry. Just,
Yo! Yo! What are you yoing?
That's the start of the pirate rap.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we are talking to yet another One Piece fan in this crowd.
God. Also, just listened to it, and yeah, that Cardcaptors theme still holds the fuck up.
Oh, yeah.
I will say the one thing I always find fucking confusing about the 4Kids thing with One Piece was that they have a character there who's a swordsman called Zoro, but for whatever reason they decided to like rename him Zolo for the 4Kids dub. Like, what was it that they couldn't afford like the rights to like the book series Zoro, or or did they just want to like work off the,
or they misunderstood the pronunciation or something like that.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know.
It's just fucking weird.
R's and L's are mixed up a lot when you go from Japanese and English. Yeah, that's what I was kind of referencing. Also, hello to everyone who is watching. If you tuned in later, the introduction or explanation of what I'm doing right here, you may notice that there's a bunch of bases, adoptable bases on the screen. I am working through art, I am presently making art for potential future adoptables. And they're going to be things that are going to be eventually for sale for individuals who want to purchase them. I will say that patrons get early dibs, for example. I do have one set already finished, and they're going to be eventually released. But part of why I'm doing this and why I was motivated to kind of get into this a little bit sooner is because recently, on checking my bank account, I've gotten a little bit on the thin side in terms of my finances. And while I'm not exactly in super dire straits, like I haven't gone into the negative, I'm also not going to be able to afford groceries next week unless I kind of pad that out a little bit more. So the adoptables is to try and help with that so that people can purchase adoptables and get something very tangible. But I'm doing this stream today to see what I can do to potentially attract some interest either in the adoptables themselves, or if people want to do a contribution of some kind, there is the Ko-fi link on the screen. Ko-fi.com/mlorelei, at which point, you can just basically I don't need anything in return. No, hopefully it's because you do enjoy what I enjoy doing.
Oh yeah.
But if you want to do it and you don't want to have to wait for an adoptable to be ready, that's an option, and it will definitely help me. I will be also posting the adoptables that are already finished. 2 of them have actually already been purchased, because again, patrons get first dibs. But they're going to probably be posted to various Discord servers that I'm a part of, as well as on Twitter, as well as my other hosting site, the other site that I'm using for hosting character stuff and designs, Toy House, which is something that Gab also introduced me to. And that's going to be an option coming sometime this weekend.
Yeah.
But hello, welcome, folks. Welcome. That's a thing, and it's where the Rachel joke comes from. Yeah. What's up, my guys and gals? Hi, Ian. Welcome. So, again, like I always emphasize, I appreciate, anything that might, that people feel comfortable actually sharing, but at the same time, the whole point is whether or not you actually feel comfortable sharing something like that. I don't want anyone to put themselves out of their own financial means. I just am I want to see what I can do to possibly shore up some money so that I can be sure to actually afford groceries and medication this upcoming week, because I do have another round of medication that I need to pick up this next Friday. But we shall... I don't think it's going to be a huge issue when worse comes to worse. I'm not, completely shit out of luck. But I'm hoping to at least provide some alternative reasons than just, give me money because I want... Not because I want it, because I do need it for certain things, but, Anyway, I'm stammering a little bit here. I guess what I mean is that I have means, but I don't want to just be hey, Dad, give me money, or hey, without any further... I'm realizing that technically I'm still kind of asking for that, just not my dad specifically. But I'm trying to say, hey, if you like the stuff that I do, if you like the entertainment that I provide by streaming, then perhaps, but... Either way, I am trying to, in the end, also provide the adoptables for people who want to pay for actual art that they are going to be able to have. I have appreciated the folks who have contributed financially without necessarily expectation of, something directly or immediately in return. But don't worry, Laura, we understand what you're getting at. I don't have any money to spare. It's fine. Like I said, I don't want anyone to put themselves out financially if it's not something that they can do without without endangering their own finances, because I've been there. I've also been the person who's I want to give everyone money. I want everyone to be financially secure. I want them to feel comfortable in their finances, but I'm kind of treading water a little bit in terms of what I'm making. on a monthly basis, plus, paying for medications and paying for food and paying for occasionally things like, just general daily expenses kind of thing. I love that technically this base design lends really well to like a sort of flowery aesthetic.
Yeah.
Let's see. Alright, sorry, I'm like, let's see, how do I want to handle this skirt? I think that works. So literally very flowery is what I was going at. I was like, flower petals, I think. But again, for those of you who are dealing with your own either financial hardship or you've got every dollar is kind of allocated to something that you need, like I've been in that position too, and it's frustrating because it's like you want to help people who are creating the stuff that you like, but she's totally a magical girl. Well, presumably. Yeah. Let's see. I guess I'm going with... I think this one might end up being the pink and brown one, all things considered. No, actually purple and yellow works well with this one too. I was thinking, like, in terms of overall aesthetic, but like I said, the theme for this one is going to be opposites. So, like, for example, I'm kind of going through the list here. The first one is going to be the red and green coloration combination. The second one, moving to the right, is going to be blue and orange. The third one is going to be purple and yellow, in terms of contrasting colors, and that even works with a flowery aesthetic, because that's kind of where you would find a purple and yellow combination.
Yeah.
And I need to figure stuff out for the last two. I know that one of them was going to be pink and brown. But, and then chair fucking pops. Awesome. Alright, let's see. Meanwhile, I do hope that all of you are doing well today. Legitimately, it's been a rough year. This month has gone by so quickly. Like, I still find it hard to believe that this year has flown by as quickly as it has. Yeah. It still feels like yesterday was my birthday, but no, that was 22 days ago now. And it's weird to think. Let's see. I'm excited for those colors. I know, right? I'm doing okay. I'm always all Phoenix. I'm always okay with you guys around. That's actually very sweet.
Aw. Thank you.
And honestly, like, I am legitimately glad if anything that I do helps other people, because folks have been seriously kind to me when I've needed it in the past. And it makes such a big difference, and it's one of those, like, I know everyone's like, oh, I want to give back, but legitimately, if something that I do actually helps someone in the way that I've been helped in the past, even by watching videos from favorite content creators or something like that, then I feel like I'm doing something right. Like, that's the financial stuff is also important because we live in a capitalist society, but...
Yeah.
Hey, Brian. I just started my senior year of high school and it feels like it's flown by too fast. Yeah. Well, and I hope that you're able to do that safely from home.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I don't know, I guess I'm kind of assuming that you're in the States, but maybe you're someplace where that's actually... I still hope that until this pandemic thing actually stops for real, and until we have a fucking vaccine that we can actually trust
Hmm.
that people are able to stay home.
Yeah.
But I know that it's not that simple. I think, honestly, that kind of works. It doesn't need to be terribly more ornamental than that, really. I'm going to add slight more. There we go. There.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. Hello, Gojira. I hope you
Hey.
enjoyed this last episode of In My Unpopular Opinion that came out recently.
Oh yeah, they made sure to leave a comment. Boy, that was an interesting episode. I'll say that much.
An interesting episode, says the Godzilla fan.
Listen,
I'm sorry, do you not want to be called that?
no, I'm not saying I don't want to be called that. I'm just saying it's interesting because, like, well, again, it's one of those things where no one has a set definition of what the fuck a Godzilla movie is or what a Godzilla fan is, even within, the fandom.
I can't call myself a Godzilla fan, although I do like individual movies within that kind of existing franchise.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is because I am in hybrid, part in person and part virtual, and now enough people came down with that in 2 weeks of online and quarantine. I love to completely agree with you, Griff. Hello, Gojira fan.
Boy.
That would be the Spanish pronunciation of Gojira. Gojira.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I need to study more Japanese.
I mean, funnily enough, like, it's with a Spanish accent that you can only really accurately pronounce the name of his son.
Of the what? Oh.
Oh, Godzilla's son, Minya. Because they spell it with 2 L's instead of a Y.
Alright.
Yeah. Or, sorry, daughter.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
Going off of that one comic, right?
Yeah. For anyone not in the know, there was a stop motion video that came out a while back where Godzilla's child came out as trans, and it was shared on the official Godzilla Twitter, and I just thought that was fucking awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Minya. Has the gender been changed?
I'm not sure if it has officially, but I just...
They seemed to kind of tacitly endorse the potential headcanon of that.
And again, Godzilla, being the good dad that he is, like, started, like, knitting, like, a sweater with, like, the trans flag colors and, just going full support on it, which I thought was really fucking wholesome.
I think we need to see more representation along those lines. Just
Hell fucking yeah.
show acceptance unconditionally. Don't, like, obviously there's the trope, and it's very true to the daily experience of a lot of trans individuals that their parents are immediately suspicious or dubious or hesitant, and some of them do face some very real danger for coming out to their family and their parents. But it's always nice to see media that doesn't inherently depict being trans as suffering.
Yeah.
Like, the suffering needs to be acknowledged, but, like, a lot of people who live those experiences, like, I don't think that it's my job, for example, to do a story about a trans person experiencing discrimination. Because while I have faced my own discrimination, it is not discrimination based on my assumed gender. Or my preferred gender, or my internal gender,
Yeah.
I don't have to face that. So it's not something I have to worry about too much. And I don't feel like it's my place to tell that story of being rejected on the basis of my perceived gender. To that extent, though, I think that if a trans person wants to tell their narrative experiencing having been ostracized or treated poorly, that's their business. And I think that those are the stories that do need to come out to understand that experience. Okay, when I say those stories needs to come out from the people who have actually experienced it. You can write about those experiences, but I do feel like if you're not someone who has experienced it, that you can't. I feel like it's a little bit appropriative to use the tragedy and suffering of a discrimination that you do not personally experience.
Yeah.
Minya or Miniela.
Yeah.
Hey, Gojiro's good to see you. So, I feel like, for example, a lot of the people who tend to write about these things when it's not an experience that they personally have often tend to, like, romanticize it, which is a problem. Like, you see a lot of stories about someone who is disabled in some capacity, whether or not they are in a wheelchair, or they're blind, or they're deaf. And sometimes it's like, oh, look at it become a superpower because of how they've had to overcome this. And it's like, or maybe they're living a normal life, you know, or maybe there is some difficulties that come with being disabled in some way or another, and ways that you kind of have to kind of cope and live with it. I don't like the idea that being disabled gives you a superpower of some kind.
So
a lot of people do that with people who are, say, on the spectrum, for example.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And you know what might fucking help with that? Getting some actual, like, consultation from a representative of that demographic you're trying to write.
Yep. Everyone can write from their own perspective to an extent, and I'm not saying don't write characters that are autistic. I'm not saying don't write characters that are trans. Don't write, XYZ demographic. I'm not saying that. I'm saying don't try to tell the story of their oppression. Be ready to have those characters, to write them in. But, like, don't make the center of their character the struggle that they may have to face being in a minority group of some kind. And it's like, I get that that's kind of hard, kind of a hard distinction when you're not used to thinking of it that way, but, like, if I want to include, I have, for example, in my D&D in D&D campaign, a character who is trans. But the thing is that initially I was going to have this whole backstory with her about unsupportive parents. I was like, well, wait a minute, I don't need to show that story. What if instead I had a trans character that was in fact supported by her parents in transitioning? And I was like, I would love to see more of that, because the more you see parents being supportive, the easier it is for someone to have, like, something of a model to live by in terms of figuring out whether or not they are, in terms of how to be supportive of their trans kid.
Yeah.
So there are a multitude of ways that you can still absolutely write a character of an oppressed demographic, but, like, because that representation is important too. I think, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being represented, like, don't avoid writing them because you're scared of messing it up. Just write that character, but in a way where their differences are not, like, a key part of their plot, Yeah. Seeing someone who is not normalized within our society being treated like a normal fucking human being goes a long way.
It really does.
I know, for example, that some of my favoritist representations of fat people are ones where we're just allowed to exist in the world, and that it doesn't have to be some kind of triumphant story of going through either self-acceptance or finding a way to make yourself pretty despite being fat. Like, those kinds of stories, honestly, not necessary. We've already got enough of those, thank you. But stories where you just have a fat person who exists as a fat person. Like, another reason, for example, why I appreciate Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, is because it does that. There are several characters in that show that are of the plus size variety that are not highlighted for being plus size. And I really appreciate that. It's good to see it normalized to the point where people aren't constantly like, there's fat shaming in the show, but it's usually from characters that we agree are fucking awful.
Oh yes.
And I am definitely making this one a frilzy person. I forgot to mention that I got a pet budgie. Hey, nice. They're really cute.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever owned a budgie. I mean, I've never owned any kind of bird. All of the birds that our family ever had were usually owned by one of the parents. I have grown up with birds, though, periodically. And they're very smart. Like, that's just it. Birds are definitely very smart. They're social creatures, so they're actually even intelligent in ways that we understand intelligence.
Oh, yeah.
Because it coincides with, our own definition of intelligence within each other. I agree with you, Laura. Good parenting to trans people would be great to see in fictional works. I absolutely agree. My brother got 2 about 6 months apart. His name is Maximus, and he's just a very small bean. Yes. I'm trying to make sure that her hair is sufficiently swoopy.
Yeah.
I do love birds. I don't know that I would have the patience or ability to give the attention that they deserve to have and that they need to have. Because functionally, here's the problem. Birds are wonderful pets and they are wonderful companions, but unfortunately, if you don't attend to their social needs, it can create bigger problems for them. She's so cute! Are you talking about Miss Swoopy Floral Bay over here?
Boy.
As a side note, BT dubs, I am still looking forward to the day when Scout actually learns what bay means. I think it's been mentioned a couple of times around him, and who knows, he may be picking up on the context, but it's hard to say. But he's, again, for those of you who don't know, running in the Magic of the Mundane D&D campaign, Scout is a character that is from a fantasy world, and the term Bay is not exactly common parlance out that way, but it has been mentioned in front of him. I think the specific instance I think of is when Ophelia is chatting with an NPC by the name of Emma, and who is also technically on the quote-unquote side of evil at that point, who is also involved with another player character, Jess, who is on the team. And they've officially started a romantic relationship, whereas my character, Ophelia, was just kind of in the blossoming period of potentially a relationship with Scout.
Yeah.
And so they kind of joke about fighting each other and then saying, should we involve the bays too? And there was kind of like a little bit of a joking about that, but then like Scout and also Weldon, who was theirs, were just kind of had a moment of like, I don't understand that word, but okay.
I don't understand what's happening, but I'm happy to be here.
Well, that might have been Weldon. I don't know how happy Scout was to be in a situation where he had to listen to the person he hates most.
Yeah, fair.
At the request of the person he likes most.
Boy.
Honestly, let's see. I love also shiny things, so if I design a lot of my characters to have like shiny things like jewelry and magic stuff, it's just, that's my preference.
I mean,
Do you like
valid.
Do you like Power Rangers? Not particularly. Not because I have anything against them, but just I watched them a little bit when I was a kid, like literally the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers series on the United States television version of it. But it was never a particular interest of mine. I do like some of the concepts that they introduced, and I have since understood a little bit more about Sentai as a genre, as a whole. But like, it's never had particular draw for me. I'll say that much.
Yeah, it's valid.
Is it though?
I mean, especially with Alex in chat.
I don't know if Alex is still here.
Oh, that's fair.
I haven't. They were here initially, but
yeah, it might be past their bedtime.
Might be. Well, no, it's it'd be about 10 right now.
Fair.
I think I'm even just going to preemptively avoid myself getting confused by this. I'm going to fix the fucking chest.
Hey?
Boy, that's... I'm going to say this. Making a joke about it, I really wish that for people who, needed/wanted top surgery, that it could be just as simple as literally taking an eraser to the chest.
Yeah.
I wish I could make it that easy for people. Like, it would be nice if we had that ability. Literally just no pain, just erase the chest you don't want.
Yeah. Would be nice.
Yeah. Alright. I am a thirsty bitch, which it gets exacerbated the more I talk, honestly. But, alright, let's see. Okay. I think I know how I'm going to approach this. Okay. Okay, I got a question for both of you. What movies have always made you cry?
I guess it depends on what you mean, like legit crying or like crying laughing.
I think probably like emotional, sad crying, probably.
Because that's just it. I'm not sure if there ever has been a movie that made me cry. Wait, I think there have been a couple actually.
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I get emotionally invested in a lot of them, and I'll say, like, I'm generally kind of a crybaby, so as long as there's some kind of emotional resolution at the end of it, I usually can find myself crying at certain things.
Yeah. Like, the funny thing is, like, it's not any comment towards, like, the quality of, like, the show or the movie. I generally don't find myself getting emotionally invested in media. Like, for whatever reason, it just never really hooks me more often than not. Like, so it's really tough for me to try and think of instances in which it has.
And there is a lot of movies that, like, they stick around for me not necessarily because of emotional value, but just because they made some kind of impression on me. And there are other ways that I get emotionally invested in things that are not necessarily crying. Off the top of my head, I don't really know movies that always make me cry. I don't watch a lot of movies as of recent, admittedly.
I mean, valid.
Definitely Inside Out. It spoke to me personally. That's actually one that I haven't watched. I cry too much at media. Yeah. I will say, like, I don't have a movie that always makes me cry no matter what, but I do have two things that make me consistently cry. One of which is the song It's Quiet Uptown from Hamilton. Like, I literally cannot listen to that one without tearing up because it hits on exactly all of the right notes, both literally and figuratively, to hit me in an emotional spot. The other being the TV series Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. I know I keep talking about it, but there's a reason. It sits in a very personal space for me. In terms of, like, emotional involvement. And there are some particular scenes that get to me. Especially one in the third season, but I'm not going to talk about it. In the Heights, Moulin Rouge for a while there. Having seen Hamilton, I came to tears first time I heard it. Yeah, beautiful fucking song. Absolutely destroys you. I will say, if there's an anime that's made me cry almost every single episode, there's been Fruits Basket, the return of it, the recent reboot of it.
Oddly enough, I think the first and possibly only anime that ever made me cry was fucking, of all things, Elfen Lied.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, odd choice, I know. Just like and it was specifically when they went into the backstory of a specific character and showed what the fuck they actually went through. It's like that's fucked. That is legit fucked, and it actually got me tearing up. Oh boy.
I'm just trying to decide what to do. I've only seen one anime, but it was a tearjerker. Your Lie in April. Oh, another one. It was Violet Evergreen.
God, that's such a good show.
It's such a good show.
It was real fucking good.
And yeah, a lot of consistent crying moments in that one.
Oh yeah, like because that. I feel like the way, and again, like it's possible that I may be reading too much into it, but I feel like they coded the main character as possibly being on the spectrum, and it could have been an unintentional thing, but if it was intentional, the way they went about doing it was fucking amazing. Because like it wasn't the stereotypical like I don't know what's happening like like it's like they legit like showed that this person, even though they may not understand what the fuck is happening, like they do get an emotional response from the circumstances. They're not like a fucking robot or fucking Sheldon or however mass media likes to portray these things. And I think another good example of that sort of characterization done well is Kimi ni Todoke.
Kimi ni Toroke, yes.
Yeah. Like, love the characters in that show.
There's that, Ori Monogatari, obviously.
Yes. I just... wholesome good fucking times.
Wholesome good fucking times. I will say, like, for example... Oh, God, there are... I was even going to go back to, in Violet Evergreen, like, I think the episode that got to me the most was, I think it was episode 8, but it involves a mother who is, for the most part, kind of bedbound, who's very clearly dealing with some sort of illness, and ends up bringing the main character in to help with writing a series of some kind of papers, some kind of either letters or something along those lines.
It was letters, I think.
Well, we know what the final result was, but it was kept something of a mystery about exactly what it was that she was doing. And meanwhile, part of the episode was the main character also bonding with that woman's daughter and not being able to actually speak about what it was that she was working on with her mother. The end of that episode got to me personally, because, you know, I have a mother who has been struggling with health issues for much of my cognitive life. So that's going to be one of those guaranteed ways to kind of get to me. Like, regardless of whether or not I've come to terms with certain things, there are some experiences that are kind of hard to just pretend don't affect you. The Hate You Give was a movie that made me cry, got me right in the heart. Yeah. I don't know that one myself.
Me neither. I'm trying to think of things that actually got me tearing up. It's, again, been very few and far between. I think maybe Schindler's List? I'm not entirely certain. Oh, God.
The ending to that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think I need to tell you guys, like, okay, I'll say this. If you have not seen Schindler's List, watch Schindler's List, and it's a long movie, and it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate who it stars, but it is a good fucking movie.
It's one of those, because of what the movie addresses and deals with, I think it's an important watch.
Yeah.
Because literally the entire movie is about the main character being made to confront his own biases and being taught empathy. And I think that through him, so does the audience, because you get to see exactly what it is that motivates him to have his emotional breakdown at the end of the movie. Because he starts off by proudly wearing the pin associated with the Nazi party and all of that. And it's this beautiful gold pin. He pins it. He has every reason to start business. He has no particular stake in whether or not, the Nazis get what they want. He just is in it for the business aspect of it.
Yeah.
And he spends the movie, for the most part, by and large, trying to turn this tragedy into a profitable venture for himself.
Yeah.
But the more that he sees of the experiences of those who are suffering at the hands of the Nazis, the more determined he gets to try and save as many of them as he possibly can. And the end of the movie, and I know that this is spoilers, but it's also a movie that's been out for like 30 years. So just maybe, I don't know. It's still worth watching regardless of how I describe it or regardless of whether I spoil it. But like, the end of the movie, he looks back at that pin that he proudly, pinned on him at the beginning of the movie and says, I could have sold this and I could have saved one more life. And he is distraught that he could not save that one life. He is distraught that he couldn't do more. And everyone, of course, is like, you did more than could have possibly been expected. And he's like, but I could have still done more than that. And it's a beautiful moment, and that's kind of shit will get to you. Great movie. I quite like the epic movies. It's a long one. I think it's a running time of about 3 hours. Yeah. Schindler's List is so good. I've seen it in one of my classes, and I'm seeing it in another class soon.
Funnily enough, I think one of the other few movies that may have gotten me going tier-wise was another film that you introduced me to, which is Evita.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, again, I'm not sure if I'm remembering correctly, but I think the ending to both Schindler and Evita had me turn up a little. Again, I can't recall entirely, but I mean, there's some good fucking acting, good fucking, just scenes in general in both those movies.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to think if there's anything else particularly that got me going to that extent. Sorry. No. So no, I'm just, I started thinking about movies that either you introduced me to or we just had to watch together, and I flashed back to that fucking moment when I went on a 10-minute tirade about how cool it was that a movie taking place in space had frozen clouds.
Yeah. Interstellar, for those of you who...
Yeah, that was it.
...are playing the home game. I will say another emotional movie that, your reactions may be mixed to, honestly, is Dead Poets Society.
Oh, God. Yeah, that was a good one. Again, you've introduced me to a lot of good fucking movies.
Including being John Malkovich, most recently.
That was fucking hilarious.
Like, I also want to show you my best friend's wedding, which I also discovered on Netflix recently. Like I watched that when I was much younger, and
I've
I recently
heard the title for years, but yeah, I've never actually seen it.
It's a movie. I mean, it's your pretty standard, rom-com kind of movie, but it's done pretty well.
Yeah, I think it's a movie I always got mixed up with My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Huh. Yeah, that's not like this.
Which I've also never seen.
I've not seen that one either.
Yeah, I mean, generally, like, movies that revolve around the concept of weddings, I generally don't like have at the top of my list. I mean, for understandable reasons. But
Yeah. Dead Poet Society is a good movie. Yes, you're all mentioning so many good movies. You're all amazing. I mean, that's just it. I will say, I mean, I know that this is like the classic heartbreaking movie kind of thing, but Titanic is also good.
yeah,
Like, it became so popular for a fucking reason.
yeah, a couple movies that you and I watched together that I again don't think I ever would have seen myself like finding without your help, or The Good Neighbor and Moon, which are really fucking good.
What was The Good Neighbor again? Oh, was that the one with the surveillance cameras, or?
Yeah, that was the one.
Because that was one of those, like, it's not what you expect it is.
Yeah, and I love movies like that.
Which is why I showed it to you.
Yeah. Also, I'm really fucking digging the design of this individual right here.
Trying to think of how to bring it around their face again.
Yeah.
Their hair.
I'm sort of getting like Who out of Whoville vibes from the hair, and I love it.
Well, now I have to start over on the hair. Thanks for that, Duncan.
I'm just saying I like it. Is it like a combination of Kingdom Hearts meets like Dr. Seuss, and it's legit cool.
But there, I want to go back to the point about Titanic because, like, I mean, I know that gets memed on all of the times, but
Oh yeah.
all of the time, but it's another one of those long movies, but it's worth the watch because, I mean, we all know what happens at the end of it. We know that whatever is going on over the course of the film is going to end in some kind of tragedy or another. There's going to be a very harrowing event that killed a lot of people.
Yeah.
Case of people who only own the second VHS because there's the one that is the one where the ship sinks. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's just it. It was, I think, one of the few cases of like films that got a video release where it did have 2 VHS tapes included.
That's the other thing. It was groundbreaking in a lot of ways, and the reason why it got 2 VHS tapes was because it was so long that this was before the advent of DVDs.
Yeah.
So they couldn't store all of that data on one thing. Like, they didn't have a single disc that they could store it on. They had to split it up into 2 VHS tapes because there just simply was not enough room to put the entire movie on one VHS tape. They split it into 2 so that it could be easily consumable. They ended up, I think the first VHS ended with the ship actually striking the iceberg. And then the second half, the one on the other tape, was the ship itself, like, slowly filling with water and all of the stuff that goes on. Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Ting are also on 2 VHS tapes. But yeah, that was also another really long movie.
God, was it?
I think so.
I'm... Because part of me is surprised to realize that they were still fucking selling VHS tapes when Lord of the Rings came out.
Yeah. Well, that was early 2000s.
God, was it?
Return of the King. Now, that was the third one. But they did kind of... Yeah, it was early 2000s because I remember... It was also coinciding with the release of the Harry Potter movies, like the initial ones.
Ah, that's right.
But unlike the Harry Potter movies, where they filmed them over the course of, like, every year was sequentially recorded, which is why you see the actors aging up appropriately. Lord of the Rings, I remember, was kind of all recorded kind of at once, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I may be wrong about that, but they wanted to make the use of their location as best as they possibly could, so... And also to keep avoiding things like people aging through the movies noticeably. And also to have the consistency between the 3 so that they could release them all kind of at once.
Yeah, and also fuck over New Zealand's economy.
Well, we're not going to talk about that because Lindsay Ellis has already addressed a good chunk of that.
Yeah. Go subscribe to Lindsay Ellis. Man. But yeah, that's the interesting thing I find. Like, I feel like high fantasy movies in the early aughts were the early aughts equivalent of, like, say, like MCU and DC movies today, or there's always fucking something to that effect coming out, like at least one or two of those types of movies coming every year during that particular period, whether it be like Lord of the Rings or fucking Harry Potter, or the reimagining of like things like Van Helsing and all those other fucking types of high fantasy or grim fairy tale things.
There was a lot of creativity in the movie industry before 9/11, I'll say that much.
Yeah.
The thing is that since then, a lot of the creativity got subverted into
Patriotism.
Well, not even just patriotism, but like whatever supported the patriotism, a lot of the jingoistic stuff that happened during that era. There was a shift in terms of they were trying to do what they could to create more escapism than actual thought-provoking movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where you like. I'm not just saying that thought-provoking movies have not happened since then. That's obviously not the case.
Oh yeah.
But they were less likely to get made than, say, for example, a constant string of sequel movies that, or rebirthing or reimagining of the original versions of those movies, or I subscribe to Lindsay Ellis. I will say this, and I know this only because Lindsay Ellis is spelled with an AY ending, and I know that's because that's how my name is spelled.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, it's exactly what you and I were talking about the other day when we finished John Malkovich. Like that, because the overall feel of that film is something we have not seen in cinema in a long, at least not mainstream cinema, in a long fucking time. And I feel like this is one of those films that was sort of like, because I forget exactly when that film came out, but I feel like it was sort of at the end of that sort of era of cinematic storytelling in the mainstream. Where it shifted more towards, like, as you said, like
escapism.
Exactly, thank you.
No longer having to focus on the thought-provoking stuff, but something that's entertaining, which, and I'll even say this, I know it sounds like I'm condemning that, and I'm not. We all need our entertainment that's just mindless, entertainment. As the resident Godzilla fan here could easily tell you, we all need those types of movies. They are also important for us culturally and individually speaking.
Yeah.
Those are also important movies to have, but I feel like we became especially formulaic in the development of movies around that time.
Yeah.
Anything that challenged the formula, unfortunately, ended up not getting quite nearly so much support. And to this day, we still have things that kind of challenge the mainstream, but don't nearly get quite as much recognition as they used to, and they don't nearly get as many, as much representation. I miss the days when action movies weren't always. When is that? I'm sorry. I appreciate the statement, but it's like, let's not reimagine history. The action movies have always been racist.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, we're not past that point.
Yeah, I mean, we're not past the point of movies being racist, period.
Well, okay, yes. But also, action movies are especially egregious because the enemies are almost usually some sort of racist caricature.
It's xenophobia, the genre.
Kind of.
My word.
It's difficult to find an example of action movies where they're not really racist, because a lot of it is just subtle stuff. We don't always cognitively, become aware that the enemies are all, some kind of foreign entity or some kind of race that is not white.
Yeah, I think the biggest microcosm of that was, or at least one of the biggest ones I've seen, is fucking Tropic Thunder. Mainly because of Robert Downey Jr. in blackface, but also because it plays off of the whole trope of, like, okay, sending the big, tough, brave Vietnam soldiers into the middle of the jungle to face the alien enemy.
Less racist. Again, I kind of know what you're trying to say, but the problem is that the racism has always kind of been there, whether it's been loudly blaring or quietly, but racism isn't necessarily outwardly declaring this entire race as an enemy of some kind. It can honestly just be that consistently every terrorist always is someone from the Middle East. Like, that was especially egregious after 9/11, but it was also present in the movies, like, say, for example, Die Hard. A lot of those movies where it's a disgruntled Middle Eastern person that is trying to exact revenge for the meddling that America did in the Middle East that ended up kind of throwing over their natural system of government and all of that stuff, and supplanting it with capitalism, which just created more turmoil, but whatever. Black people are always represented as thugs or gangsters or things along those lines. So that's a really, really unfortunate, consistent trope, and that has been for many, many years. If you go back far enough, a lot of those movies are just kind of racist intentionally because they think that that's just the order of things.
Yeah, I think back to, like, two specific examples that come to mind are fucking Independence Day and Mars Attacks, where they sort of doubled down on we have a main black character, so we just have to have him hooting and hollering at everything that happens.
Oh my god. Like, I love Will Smith, right? And I don't think he necessarily did poorly in that movie. I think, honestly, if there was ever going to be a way to utilize everything that Will Smith was, it was going to be a movie that has him being snarky and sarcastic and kind of, I hate to say hooting and hollering, and that is in itself kind of an unfortunate stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say that it's not, but I do think that it played to Will Smith's strengths.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Hollywood isn't great isn't understatement.
Mm-hmm. Then he tried to get his kid into the business.
Oh, Jaden?
Yeah. And again, never seen anything. Can't speak to the individual's personality. They don't have a great track record.
I mean, I don't know them on an individual basis. I do know that his daughter Willow is actually amazingly talented. I mean, a lot of people make fun of her because of the Whip Your Hair song.
Boy, was that her?
Yeah.
Huh.
I whip my hair back and forth, I whip my hair back and forth, I whip my hair back and forth. Like, I get it. That's kind of an obnoxious song, especially in the way that it's repetitive, but the actual song isn't bad. The theme of it is actually pretty good. Kind of an important message about individuality and letting yourself be free to express yourself.
Yeah.
But she's actually a fantastic singer. Because I think of one of the other songs that kind of came out not too long after that one, called I Am Me. And I can't play it for you guys because streaming, but you can find it on YouTube, and it's actually very sweet.
Yeah. Also, yeah, you're not wrong, Ian. Finn in the new Star Wars trilogy was another example of, like, a black actor getting royally fucked.
Like, that's just it. He was very clearly being set up to be another protagonist in the same way that Rey was, as well as in the same way that Luke Skywalker was in the original trilogy. But they obviously decided that since the more popular characters were the white people, they ditched that plot, that entire plot point, and went with what they thought was going to get them money, and unfortunately they weren't wrong. I'm not going to say that fucking Kylo Ren's story... I haven't seen the third movie, and I'll say that much. I'm not going to say that him having a redemption arc in itself is not a bad problem. The problem is that when the problem comes in when they do it at the expense of the characterization of other people in that story.
Yeah.
Neck Gold, yes. I would stay longer, but I have work to do. Take care, Gold. The sequel trilogy had so much potential. A lot of people are like, oh, well, the first movie is just a rehashing of, the Star Wars Episode 4. And it's like, yeah, Because here's the thing, and I'm going to tell you this as a writer, what they likely were trying to do was reintroduce people into the theme, into the feel of the original Star Wars trilogy by starting with something familiar, so that we do know that, yeah, it's fitting in that same vein. But then from there, they could have expanded on the story and taken it in unique directions. But familiarizing, because especially after the disaster of the prequel trilogy, that's the other part of this to take into account, is that the disaster of the prequel trilogy was that they deviated way too much from what made the original trilogy as good and as important as it was.
Oh yeah, and I myself, and you know this because I've made a fucking video about it, but I myself have mixed feelings on that, because yeah, it didn't feel like Star Wars. I feel like there's a happy balance to be drawn between doing something original with the story, which I feel like may have been the intention initially with Phantom Menace, and then just not giving a shit about being Star Wars. You have to find that happy balance, I feel.
Yeah, the prequel trilogy was good for some of what it was trying to do, but unfortunately I feel like it dropped the ball in a lot of ways, especially when they kept focusing on the political stuff. The problem is, and I'm going to even say this, the reason why it focused on the political stuff was because at the time that trilogy was being developed, there was a lot of political deliberation that was going on. That, similar to the Shin Godzilla movie, where they did a lot of bureaucracy and not actually taking action, it was meant to comment on that. That people were very content to simply sit by and let democracy die by letting someone who was voted in decide to take charge and absolute control. I wonder why they might have been making that commentary back in the early 2000s, late 1990s. I wonder fucking why. It's not like anything ever came of that or anything. But, you know. There were some good points to be made, but unfortunately it ended up getting lost because of the mischaracterization of their cast and not handling it the best way that they could have. The main difference between the two was the pacing.
Yeah, another example that comes to mind for me is of a film where there's definitely a good political statement to be made, but this is either the wrong film to make it in, or just it's not. Well, it's just the wrong film to make it in. Was the fucking movie adaptation of V for Vendetta? Because V for Vendetta is a great fucking story, except they made it into a big fucking 9/11 movie. They turned it into a 9/11 movie. They Americanized it so much they changed the name of the primary antagonist to Sutler, literally so they could make it sound more like Hitler.
Yeah, I think there are elements of that movie that sadly got absorbed by the dude bros, the same ones who are always talk about red pilling and shit like that.
Yeah, I mean, and again, there is a lot to say about the way America fucked up, in terms of both handling 9/11 and, again, depending on who you ask, how it may have had a hand in it. Again, all shit that should be addressed in media. V for Vendetta already has more than enough statements to make. They're distinct to, the UK. And because it was a Hollywood movie, they decided they needed to make it more relatable for American audiences, and that's why it ended up the way it was.
Yay! Well, I mean, I say yay too in the chat. Fuck you. But anyway, yay! Gab's off of work.
Yay!
Now I gotta go home. Still gonna be listening. Hope you get home safe. Same. Be safe and don't let us distract you. I know that it's hard to look away from my face not being on camera, but
yeah. So when are we making that movie podcast?
We're not. Specifically because you need to be a bitch, but no.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just it. That's not necessarily inherently off the table or anything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and again, it doesn't even have to be about fucking movies, just... I do enjoy
hope it's not about fucking movies.
Yeah, I mean, generally, no, yeah. I mean, especially, again, the Ace and the A-Row. Probably not the best subject matter to be covering. Yeah, I do enjoy. I do hope that people enjoy hearing us discuss these things at length. You know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I hope so, too.
Yeah.
We have our own unique thoughts on these things. Like, one of the things that we even have in common is that we have a lot of opinions about the media that we consume. Hence our also respective series on our channels with symbolism and lore for me, and in my unpopular opinion for Griffin, is that we are opinionated people.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, because I mean, like I'll be the first to admit it. The logician is a rantsona, always has been, even before like the modern terminology was brought to the table. But I mean, it's what he was essentially made for, an outlet for me to get these thoughts out of my head, and I've embraced it at this point, and I try to embrace it in such a way to where I can actually sort of take the concept back from like the centrist basically the centrist idea of what most people associate Ransonas with, like
the skeptic community.
Exactly, yeah, trying to sort of weaponizing it in such a way that actually gets people legitimately thinking and legitimately like being skeptical of things, rather than just saying like, oh, it's the SJWs again.
I mean, that's a tough and steep order to try and kind of do, but
Yeah.
let's see.
Which made a lot easier though by your immense help in providing those logician picks.
The sprites that you use?
Yeah, yeah, very appreciative of that.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Um, sorry, well, I'm also kind of technically a bit distracted while doing this.
Understandable.
Um,
Getting some One Punch Man design vibes from this character.
not intentionally or anything.
Yeah, I know. It's just like I'm reminded of that green-haired psychic character whose name escapes me at the moment.
Oh, yeah,
Tornado, I think.
Yeah, the child brat looking one.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to season 3.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. That's another example, I think, of like media where like it's not trying to go too terribly out of the box, but by staying within the box to an extent, it makes a good fucking statement. Like fucking like Garo from season 2. He's just because they showed his progression to how he gets to where he is, and he's a kid who feels for the monsters that get beat up, on a weekly basis by the Sentai hero. And he's like, well, why can't these guys get people cheering for them, And he's just gets shit on more and more by both kids and adults, that sort of just blindly accept a lot of these things that we see in media and how it bleeds over into real life, and that leads to him trying to open people's eyes a bit, if not punch them the fuck out of their skulls.
I mean, you know how it is.
Yeah.
They're giving me sci-fi warrior vibes. Interesting, because what I'm even thinking of here is druid, weirdly enough.
You know what? I see it.
Let's see. But there's a lot to be said about challenging mainstream ideas, and it still definitely happens. In terms of you having a rant sona, like, that's not really in itself a surprise. Alright, let's see. What I want to do is this. There's that. I am upset with the skeptic community for many reasons, because here's the thing. Back in the day, the reason why skeptic communities rose to prominence, there's a couple of things that went into that, including and not limited to the prominence of Christian evangelism, which was really popular, especially around the time when the skeptic community came to light. That's why you had characters, people like the Amazing Atheist, who is a total asshole, BT dubs.
Yeah.
That rose to prominence because they would just simply fact check the evangelists and like, well, you say this, but here's actually the scientific examination of what it is that you're talking about. So take that, Christians. You're trying to dominate the internet. You're trying to dominate society, but you are just fundamentally incorrect. Which, disclaimer, I'm not going to tell someone that they are incorrect for their beliefs. I will tell people if I feel that their beliefs are harmful to someone else, and I will say you may want to reconsider, like, Christianity can be important to people. I find that as a whole, as an institution, it's something that harms people, but individual belief does not factor into that.
Oh yeah. Like I have friends who consider themselves like you know well, maybe not necessarily Catholic. Well, I guess Catholic technically, but they will royally and readily tell the church to go fuck itself any day of the week.
And that's just it. Individual beliefs. But the skeptic community did a lot to challenge those preconceptions as they were established and to call them out and to give them kind of like no room to claim certain things, which I feel has kind of backfired a little bit. But that's kind of beside the point to an extent. They basically set an early precedent for being the logical, rational individuals. And when the prominence of Christian evangelism online ended up kind of fading out a little bit, they needed new targets. And you'll even hear from, like, people who are formally part of, like, those communities, especially, like, Gamergate and, the red-pilled community and all of that, that very often what got them in was that these were people who were completely rational in the face of, irrational people. Yeah. And then at some point they decided that feminism is completely irrational because supposedly feminists already had shaped society for the better, so that further attempts to try and change society because they were quote-unquote already equal were just attempts to try and make women more successful in society than men. Problem is that societally speaking, we are not quite there. We are not quite on terms of equality when it comes to women in terms of power as well as representation, which is why feminism is still around, which is why it's still alive and kicking and trying to do its best to address the still current inequity between presumed genders. Feminism exists specifically to challenge what we sort of just kind of expect as the paradigm. But because it's been decided that we no longer need feminism, these people are like, well, logically, since we already know that feminism has already won, we don't need it anymore. So these people who were saying things are unequal must be delusional. And so they turned all of those skills that they honed fighting the Christian evangelists, turned that onto the feminists who were saying, no, something is still wrong with society, and turned the feminists into the new irrational Christians that they had been debating this entire time. Mm-hmm. Our red pill, oh god. Yeah. Oh god is a good word for it. Good set of words, really. They took what they'd already learned from debating Christians online, calling into question those beliefs, and, like, basically just saying, don't accept this blindly. Try and make the decision for yourself, and don't just accept it because someone else tells you something. The problem is that when they changed the targets to something that was a little bit less irrational and actually, like, having to do with real world problems, that they ended up falling into, they met more resistance, which then also led into more, like, doubling down on the, well, but you don't understand, I am supremely rational, and thus people who disagree with me must be irrational.
I mean, that's just it. They moved the message from "don't believe everything you hear" to "don't believe anything you hear."
And so a lot of this was also encouraged by the likes of South Park, for example, where
Yeah.
they made fun of the very concept of caring about things, and the everyone has something that they're wrong about, and so thus they're all equally bad. Like, yeah, the people who are sexist against women are terrible, but then so are the feminists because they take a stance that devalues, the presence of men, and they want to take power away from men, so they are equally bad as the men that have taken societal power away from women. And that's an unfortunate stance to take because, again, there is still inequity. But if we're being told that we're post feminism because they've already achieved everything that they need to achieve, and then there are people out there still saying, no, we still need to improve on certain things, then it sort of starts feeling like an attack. Because it's like, if you already believe that something has been fixed, and someone says, well, we need to fix it, it's like, imagine if someone broke a plate on the floor and you came along, or a bunch of people, someone came along and actually glued it back together, and it's as good as new. There's a crack in it, but it's not like, it's never going to be perfect because it was cracked, but it was fixed. And so a woman comes along and says, no, the plate is still broken, and you're kind of like, but it's clearly been glued back together. It's not broken anymore. And they say, no, it's still in pieces all over the floor. Like, obviously from that perspective, someone saying that you already know something to be true and factual, and they're saying, no, you're wrong, it's kind of like you are clearly stupid. However, the problem is, from the feminist perspective, people took two pieces of the plate and glued it back together, and there are still pieces on the floor. There's still, bits and pieces of that plate that have not been put together, but someone took the two parts of the plate, put them together in such a way that it looks like a plate. It looks like complete equality, but it's not a complete plate. Anyway, this analogy went to an interesting direction, but basically there are still fights to be had, and the skeptic community has basically already decided that those fights don't need to be had. And so they started attacking feminism, which got them pushed back from within their own community because there are atheists who are also feminists, and it ended up attracting a very particular subset to the skeptic community of people who were frustrated by what they perceived a power dynamic being taken away from them. That's a really good analogy on this, and it's a severe problem with society. Like, I try to be a person who takes in a good chunk of perspectives. I try to listen to what people are saying when they say that something isn't quite right with the way things are. I agree with that. Things aren't quite right. And sometimes we may agree on what is right and what is not right. There may be disagreement on whether or not something is correct or otherwise. But, like, something is still wrong because there are still disagreements. There are still things that need to be improved upon. But the problem comes in when people say that the problem is in those trying to fix the problem. Like, they're trying to fix something that's not a problem, and so thus they are actually the problem. They're creating a problem where there wasn't one before, so now we need to stop them from behaving in such an irrational way. Which is kind of where we are. So the skeptic community went from that to anti-feminism, and then from there started digging up what is now presently known as the incel community, the red pill community, where they believe that we have as a society been conditioned to just simply accept that these social justice groups that are trying to call for reform are just trying to take power away from them. Which is like, well, yes, kind of. Like, you might get a smaller piece of the pie, but that doesn't mean that you're not getting pie. You've already been taking too much of the pie in the first place, which is why people have an issue with it. But it's like being told, hey, slightly less pie for you means that everyone gets pie, and these are the people that are going, but I liked having that much pie. Why do they have to take my pie? It was my pie. It was my cut of the pie. And so it's the perception of these people who are now getting that pie that originally belonged to the people who were taking that bigger slice of the pie, are taking that pie away from them, and so they're fighting to continue to have half of the pie piled onto their own plate. Now, I say all of this and I want to add for clarity's sake, obviously, there are bad actors on both sides. Not everyone is summed up by the quote-unquote leaders of the skeptic community. Not everyone is defined by, the vocal minority of people who really do terrible things in bad faith. There are, for example, radfems or radical feminists, and I say that with the asterisk of not actually feminists, but people who do genuinely want to not only remove men from positions of power, but to make them suffer because they believe that that would be justice. And a lot of feminists do not fall in line with that. Most do not. But the radfems are... They observe the injustice that is currently perpetuated by the system that we live in, and have turned around and claimed, no, we need to fight back. And we need to claim this back for ourselves. And on the one hand, I can't entirely fault them for that. But on the other, I draw the line at actually causing harm to a group of people and demanding harm. Like I knew one person who literally enjoyed certain games because it allowed you to do incredibly harmful and destructive things towards male characters in particular. And that's a problem.
A bit.
And a lot of those radfems, unfortunately, also got dragged into the position of TERFdom, trans exclusionary radical feminists. That's where the term TERF came from. And it's because they have decided that trans women are not women. And I'm not going to get into the full rhetoric of that, but basically the idea being, no, we're not going to allow them in our community because XYZ. And that in itself is a very, very complicated position to be in. Made at home, these designs are looking fantastic so far, Lauren. I'm excited to see the progress later. For now, I'm going to split. But thank you for streaming. Thank you for attending for, I guess, as long as... God, I've been going for 2.5 hours. Jeez.
Yeah.
I see how it is. I start talking about feminism and TERFs, and you decide, oh, I need to leave. But it's... To say that it's complicated is understating it. Because, of course it's complicated. It's not black and white. It's not simple. There are people who have good points. If they didn't have good points, they wouldn't have people who believed in it. And that's just it. That has to be accounted for. And it's like a lot of people get into TERFdom or radical feminism because there is still inequity within our society. There is still there are still problems that need to be addressed. But the problem is that the execution of it ends up being uninclusive of people who do need to be part of that community.
Yeah.
And can do more harm than intended because of what could have been a good point. And for example, one of the targets that have been affected by this sort of mindset are ace people, never mind aro people. Because thinking, oh, ace people are invading this, this queer space, never mind the addressing of the term queer, but anyway, they don't belong in this because they can still be attracted to someone of a different gender, and so they're not actually queer, they're not LGBT, they are in themselves, they don't belong in this community, and they're trying to co-opt a community instead of making their own. And it's like, I hate to tell you guys this, but aces have always been part of the LGBT community, as has the word queer, just FYI. But they use that as a sort of gateway thing into convincing people that that there's an invasion that's going on. That people are trying to get into a community that they don't actually belong to. People still believe in stupid things even if there are no good points. That's true. Mm-hmm. But the point is actually that there's at least a point of entry that sounds reasonable. That's the whole point, is that you wouldn't have people getting into these things if there wasn't at least something that got to them, something that is rational. They may go completely off the rails at some point, but the appeal isn't in the extremes, but in the overlap with the parts that are not necessarily incorrect. That's where the problem is. That's why I say that you can have a good point with it still leading into something that is extremely radical and not conducive to any kind of justice. So you're always going to have the feminists who do not act in the best interests for women. You're always going to have, people within the atheist community that aren't necessarily about tearing down everyone around them for their beliefs, but simply want to say, we have a right to not believe in something. And we have a right to demand that there is better treatment being offered to those who are not part of this belief system. That's all well and good. But it's the imposition of one set of beliefs on others, which, again, people who are in that, I guess, red pill zone believe is what's happening when you have people objecting to what it is, like, objecting to that kind of ideology, basically. It's not easy. It's not easy being green either.
Yeah.
It's not easy to navigate because if it were simply black and white, then we wouldn't have these conflicts. But we do have them because there are valid points to be had. Now, the valid points aren't things like, we're being invaded by this community or by this demographic, and so we need to get rid of them to protect ourselves and to have this space continue to be safe for us. That's not the rational point of having a good point. The rational point is there is something wrong, and I feel like the people that are coming in as a result of something else happening are the ones who cause it. As opposed to looking at, well, gee, for example, I guess this is technically where this is the first thing that genuinely does come to mind. We have a lot of people from South American countries that are, trying to immigrate into the United States. They have been for a while. And a lot of people look at that as an invasion, but it's like, it's because things have been so destabilized, especially in Mexico, but in a lot of South American countries or even Central American countries, that is causing them to need to get out of those places because it is something that is either literally killing them or destroying their ability to maintain any kind of livelihood, to survive, or that there's a real and present danger. And a lot of that is because of America's meddling in South and Central America. Yeah. In terms of the government and instituting people that they know are going to feed into capitalism the way that they wanted them to. Mm-hmm. It would be nice if people could be less combative. Yes, it would be nice, but I want to get to that point too. I absolutely 100% agree with that. But it's not. Anyway, trying to trace my thoughts back again, sorry.
It's alright.
In terms of like extended metaphors and everything. The example of them coming up to America, the problem is in what's going on within their countries. But unfortunately, the part that a lot of people who do live in America see is they're coming in, which ends up destabilizing certain things in this country. Like the idea, there's this perception that has been put out there that there's a finite set of resources that these invaders are now taking away from people who live here. And the thing is that the concept of there being a finite list of resources comes from a government that withholds things that do wrongfully belong to the American people. Capitalism in itself is what creates the idea that there is a finite amount of resources for us to be able to actually survive on, because it puts a lock and key on things that we need to survive. But because they've now convinced us that what's taking it away is not the government putting a financial barrier on these things, but these other people coming up from another country, those are the people that are causing the problem, and they're taking those resources away from American citizens. Like, that's where that belief comes from.
Yeah, it's a dangerous combination of manifest destiny and the tragedy of the commons, which, again, if you ever read up on either of those, a lot of the ways capitalism fucks us up, not only us up, but the entire planet up, will make a lot more sense when you understand, like, oh wait, this is what these people fucking think? Oh, well, maybe I should maybe start a socialist commune.
Maybe. I mean, I'm very left-leaning, I'm very socialist, but not everyone has to be socialist. I think it would be nice if we could form together a cohesive society that does not rely on a central government that hoards whatever money we send to it, but, you know.
Well, I mean, that's just it. Technologically speaking, we have advanced to the point where we really don't need a lot of the menial jobs that we do force people to go into in order to earn, like bottom of the barrel wage. Like, a lot of the jobs, like, that we do have in this country could be just gone overnight if we automated a lot of it, which, again, some people might cry out, oh, but they're taking our jobs. Well, they're jobs that don't need to exist. They're jobs that needlessly make people suffer because we have the resources available to provide for everyone.
That's just it. Like, the whole concept between seize the means of production is literally the means of production involves things like food and shelter and all of these products that we need to get by in our daily life. If we seize that and simply redistribute what is being manufactured to the people, then there won't be a need for a financial barrier. In fact, we won't have a need for money if indeed all of our basic needs are being met, because it would then become a sense of luxury. The idea of capital in itself is about taking things away from someone else and then charging them for access to it.
Yeah,
hello, Robrina.
Exclusivity.
And boy, did I walk into a fun conversation, yes.
Yeah.
But, like, it's the very concept of there needs to be some sort of financial barrier. Like, and I'll even say, I've heard, like, people are like, oh, but you're still asking for money, which I can get back into in a second, but, like, you're still asking for money for these things. You're also as much of a problem. And it's like, no, I ask for money for the things that I do almost purely on the basis of I also live in a capitalist world, and if I don't have money, then I can't afford food, I can't afford medication, I can't afford, like, doctor visits, or at least even, like, the telecommunication stuff that I've been doing lately for that. I can't afford all sorts of things because there is a barrier imposed by the concept of owning something versus actually producing it yourself. The system forces you to participate. Yes, exactly. You're participating by obligation. And if you don't, like, a lot of people are like, oh, you can just go off the grid, grow a garden. And it's like, that may be an option for some people, but it's also not feasible. Because also, if you don't leave, if you live in a structure that's in the United States at all, then they can take you in for legal things for trying to take a piece of property that does not belong to you. There's the first starting thing. You can do away with amenities such as like electricity and internet and stuff like that. You can go off the grid, but you can live without those things, but you also will not be able to benefit from those things. Among other things, that in itself can be a problem for people who deal with disability, for example. And also, it doesn't really solve the problem because most people are not equipped, actually, to simply live off the land. And it requires a lot more work than your average person is either capable of doing or is willing to do. It's not really a viable option, especially because things like there are laws on the books that prevent you, for example, from collecting rainwater. They actually will arrest you for having anything that collects rainwater because they want to charge you for it. They believe that that's something that belongs to the city, and so you can get into literal legal trouble for collecting rainwater just by having something on your property that happens to catch rainwater as it falls. Something that is freely available by the earth itself delivering it to your door, and they want to charge you for it, so they've now made it illegal for you to take an action independent of purchasing it. Or if you buy a sandwich for a homeless person, there are some states where doing so is an illegal action. And they call it illegal so that they can then make sure that homeless people continue to suffer and that we continue to be afraid of ever being homeless. Because now we can no longer offer individual charity to people. We can no longer ease their suffering. Which, let's be real, they're trying to kill off all homeless people. That's also a big reason as to why they didn't do anything about coronavirus when they had the chance. I mean, it's been admitted. I'm not saying anything actually controversial. It was literally said that Trump didn't do anything regarding COVID initially because it was projected to largely target states that were more Democratic run. And he wanted to let them die. Like, that's literally what he has admitted to. That's not a secret. Things like buying a sandwich for a homeless person is illegal because they want to... supposedly they don't want to encourage them to stay homeless. And it's like, well, if you don't want them to stay homeless, then give them a home. We have more houses than homeless people. I mean, literally, we have more unoccupied houses than homeless people. We could literally house every single last one of them, and it wouldn't put a dent in anyone else's life. But the thing is that they want to charge an admission fee to be able to get into those houses, which is where the problem comes in. They don't want to just simply give those houses to people. They want to make capital off of those houses. And if you put people in them for free, then how are they supposed to make money doing that? Ignoring the very concept of, if we work together to build a better society, if homeless people have a home, regardless of what they do to it, regardless of if they trash it, regardless if it becomes a den for drug making or whatever excuses you might have for someone who is homeless to not have their own house, regardless of what else, they are more likely to actually go out and be able to get a job and to contribute back to society as a whole. Like, if we're going on that being your basis of contributing back to society, they're more able to do those things if they have a home that they can actually base themselves in. If they have at least that much support, it's amazing how far that will go. But people don't want to learn about that. People don't care about that. All they care about is the idea of someone getting something that they haven't, quote unquote, earned. Living off the grid sounds like a lonely lifestyle anyway. I'd love to form like a commune for that kind of thing. But yeah, no, we have the means to actually make sure that everyone has what they need. We have the production means to process food that gets grown by farmers presently, for example, to turn that into food that we can all have. We have the means to distribute it. The main reason why it's currently money locked is only because there are people who need to have money in order to survive on their ends, and so they have to charge for things. They have to charge for their services, which then creates a whole necessity chain down the line of having to pay for things. But could you imagine if, in fact, that first person along the chain didn't have to charge for what they're doing? Then the next person wouldn't have to pay for that charge, and, again, don't have to worry about making enough money on their end, so they don't need to charge anything. And it creates this whole chain of you can produce something without needing to worry about doing something about it. America is becoming more and more greedy, demanding more despite being the most profitable country. No, it's not the most profitable country in the world.
It's really not.
We have the illusion of being profitable, but the problem is that the only people who are profiting are literally the 1% at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the people in this country have not enjoyed any form of profit or financial success. And we've kind of only deluded ourselves into believing it. It's not the matter of us becoming more and more greedy. It's because we have been kept in debt in cases of need. We have been deprived of what we need in order to survive for so long that we become upset at the proposition of someone getting something for free. Like, getting something for just existing seems alien because we've been taught to fight and to be upset and to have to fight for every scrap that we get. That it creates resentment for people who supposedly get it without even trying, while ignoring that the billionaires and the millionaires at the top are literally making their money by doing nothing. Like, they're most of them are not even innovating anything. They just happen to own the thing that is making money, and they are charging other people to do that thing. And that's kind of something of an oversimplification, but honestly, that is what it comes down to. There are people who have said, we own this thing, and so we get to charge for the use of the thing, and that's how they make the money. That's why I also hate the concept of landlords. They own a house, and thus, again, this is circular logic, for example. They supposedly own the property that they are renting out to other people. Now, on the surface, it seems logical that they need to charge people for, you know, the mortgages that they have to pay on that house, or they have to charge people for the maintenance of that house. But when it comes down to it, if the only way that you can afford taking care of that property is by renting it out to someone else, then do you really own the property, or do they? If you can't afford to keep that house without a person renting it, then do you really own that house? Or are you simply owning it by virtue of other people paying you to live there? In which case, you're not owning that so much as it's in your name and you're profiting from other people paying you that money to own it.
Also, good job, Rube. A-Lab.
Yeah, solid landlords are bastards. That's just it. Like, and obviously individual people, some people who get into being landlords are not doing it for, you know, completely selfish reasons. A lot of people do, like, this is the minimum that I have to charge you in order to keep services running. And I get that too. Like, I'm not going to deny that there are people out there who are genuinely trying to do their best despite the capitalistic infrastructure that makes that far more difficult. But, like, let's double check something real quick. Okay. But the sad thing is that the whole concept in itself needs to be dismantled because it's not doing anyone any good. It's only serving to, in fact, make life more difficult for people who are not already in a position of power. So it's rough, to say the least. But, and a lot of people are like, well, if people didn't have to earn their excuse me, I've got the hiccups. If people didn't have to earn their living, then they wouldn't do anything. And I point to what happened in the wake of coronavirus. People who were forced to be home all day long went fucking insane because they weren't able to be productive. Part of that is because of social conditioning to believe that if we're not productive, then we're wasting our time. And that is part of it too. But people would find shit to do. They would absolutely still stand up to do the things that need to be done in order to make society run. In fact, they'll be able to do it easier if their basic needs are met. Even in instances in places where they have actually instituted a universal basic income of some kind, the people in that society are not going to simply sit. Some people do sit back with just whatever they're given. But a lot of other people actually step up and say, I want to do more. I want to have more luxuries. I want to have more, personal things that I do. But they don't have to starve to get those things. And they don't have to, miss out on things like shelter and stuff like that keeps them alive. Which means that they can focus on actually doing the job that they need to do. And don't get me started on my brother's dickwad of a landlord. Yeah. But generally speaking, people will absolutely still be happy to do work that needs to be done. A lot of people would definitely stand up to get work done that needs to get done, especially if it does provide us with the means to make sure that everyone can survive. Because more than it just being a selfish thing of, I'll get something out of doing this, it's everyone gets something out of doing this. But we are so conditioned to the idea that if we don't do something, then we don't survive. We are so conditioned to the concept of individualism that the idea of doing something just for the sake of helping everyone communally, but not necessarily inherently getting yours, it's so alien. Because if you give for someone else and you're not getting something inherently and guaranteed in return, then what happens when you need to pay for, like, rent, or when you find yourself lacking for something? How do you know that the people that you're doing this for will pay you back in the end? Like, how can you be sure that your efforts are being recognized? And that's rough. Like, that is a hard thing to determine when you've grown up in a society that hinges on what you can contribute back and thus be paid for in return. It's hard to imagine there being another way of doing things. But there is a way. It's just, we have to dismantle a lot of the way that the current system works in order to get to that point. If we eliminate the basic need of having to pay rent for existing, then we might be able to see more positive things kind of grow from that. Weren't people who stepped back from work new parents and students? Yeah, often the people who would actually not do work were often people who needed to be able to focus on other things. So things like being a student or being a new parent with a baby that would need their full undivided attention. And there's always going to be the handful of people who will do whatever it takes to avoid having to do work. There's always outliers, but you shouldn't make everyone suffer for the sake of the potential of one person getting something that they quote-unquote don't deserve. It is wrong to make the entirety of every person out there who suffers from disability have to jump through hoops to be able to have the money that they need to survive, just because there might be individuals who might take advantage of the system. And to take that attitude in the first place is pretty much the, why should anyone get anything for free when I had to work for it? It literally only works on the basis of if you assume that people who are getting this don't actually deserve it, or that they're just trying to cheat the system because you don't have to struggle with whatever they have to struggle with. It's the same reasoning behind being against affirmative action, the idea of people getting into colleges or other, related quote-unquote benefits on the basis of previous discrimination and ongoing discrimination. Excuse me. But actually, I gotta go. Take care, people. All right, take care, Phoenix.
Hey, have a good one, man.
And it's like there's always going to be an argument, that goes against anything that I say. And there's always going to be an argument in response to even those arguments. There's always going to be some degree of resistance that has good points. That's why I always say, everyone has good points. It just matters the context in which you're using it. Hang on a sec. Okay. Anyway, there's always going to be people who argue with you about something. There's always going to be disagreement, and they're always going to have some degree of truth to what they're saying. The problem is that we need to collectively work towards to figuring out, educating on the differences that are being made, and accept that there are always going to be people who will take advantage of whatever system is meant to collectively improve our lot in life.
We need to relearn empathy, and that's the main part of it, I believe, because once you have that empathy back, you start to understand a lot more why it is, how we can justify, quote unquote justify, that doesn't need justification, but how you can justify the concept of, living in a system in which you don't have to, break your back earning your ability to have a roof over your head, where you don't have to earn, a plate of food in front of you every day.
And among other things, a lot of that lack of empathy is something that we get trained into.
Yeah.
Because I think that people really are inherently born empathetic, and a lot of it gets kind of hammered out of us because it's inconvenient to capitalism if we care about each other. And we get taught that if we care for someone other than ourselves, then we lose. We lose something. Someone else gains it. Anyway, all of this talk aside, I will say the whole concept of having to live in a system when it comes to, requiring money in order to survive, even when you disagree with the very concept of capitalism, of requiring money in order to survive. One of the reasons why I am streaming today as opposed to my usual Saturday is because I am trying to raise at least a little bit of extra money for this next week, because I looked at my bank account and it's really close to hitting negative numbers. And it certainly will get into negative numbers starting next week, because I will eventually need to order groceries. And while next week I do also have Patreon money coming in, I'm going to need to order groceries before that point. And on top of that, I've also got a medication that I need to be purchasing, some medication that I need to be purchasing as of next week. And so I want to see what I can do to give myself a little bit of extra wiggle room, because, unfortunately, I don't think that $10 is quite enough to last me a whole week in terms of food. So I'm trying to boost that a little bit more by streaming today, asking if people don't mind doing coffee donations through the link on the screen. There's coffee.com/mlorelei, as well as what I'm doing right now. The art that you're seeing me do is actually adoptables these are going to be eventually purchasable designs that people can use for whatever purpose. I'm going with the theme of like D&D as a whole. Like they're called like D&D adoptables basically, but while they are fantasy inspired, you can use them for whatever purpose you want to use them for. Once you purchase the actual adoptable itself, it becomes your design, and you can use it pretty much for anything. And like I've actually got another set that is actually already completed. I have given patrons first dib, and oh, thank you, somebody. Thank you very much.
Much appreciated.
But yeah, I made it available to patrons first, and actually 2 of them have already been purchased, which I'm going to be making note of when I do fully post them. This weekend, they are probably going to be going up on various social media. If you are in my Discord servers, you will probably also get to see that coming up, like, tomorrow, I think, is when I'm going to be probably getting everything ready to get posted. But I think they're about $15 a piece, and then you get to use that design for whatever purpose. That's probably going to help me, assuming that people continue to like these designs. I will be making note of the designs that have already been purchased, and obviously it's kind of on a first come, first serve basis. So basically you can claim something and be like, yeah, I want this thing, let me know if, let me know to purchase it, like where I can toss money at you to purchase this thing. And I'm largely going to go by like timestamps. Like that's one of the reasons why I have timestamps active for a lot of this stuff. But like I am hoping to turn this into a thing that I'm able to do regularly. As I said earlier, kind of something of a side hustle to everything else that I'm doing. Because I enjoy making these. I've always kind of enjoyed designing characters and giving them outfits and stuff like that. I'm like, I may as well turn this into something like if people want to buy these designs, then it's kind of a win-win situation.
Yeah.
But hopefully it ends up being something that people enjoy. Like I said, I'm encouraged because I've already had 2 purchases from that entire thing. But I'm hoping to be able to do fairly well on that. Anyway, all of that said, I am enjoying the process of making these, and I'm looking forward to debuting the first set probably tomorrow. I mean, I don't want to guarantee anything just because a lot of things can happen in a 24-hour period. But I will be making them available soon. And I think actually on the mention of that, I have been going for a little over 3 hours now. I'm starting to feel a little bit raw in my voice because I do a lot of talking. I don't know if you guys have noticed that or not from all of the times that I have been streaming and making video content for the last 10 years.
Yeah, it's almost as if we're both primarily known for making content that heavily involves our voices.
Something like that. I don't know. So I think that what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it here for today. Like, I gave that last little note of, hey, if you want to chip in, that's still one of those things. If you want to do that, it's not a requirement. I will probably still be streaming this Saturday. I might stream tomorrow too. That's not going to be a guarantee, but I'm hoping to be able to stream again this Saturday. And if I'm able to do that, it's probably either going to be more Final Fantasy VII or maybe something new, like maybe, well, it wouldn't be new to do Stardew, but the new concept would be kind of explained on the spot. Or it might be a game that has recently started becoming a little bit popular called Among Us, which I love that game. I have even an anecdote that I might as well share. So, my first time effectively playing the game, through 2 games, I never got imposter, except for literally once. Yeah. And because I never got imposter, like, the time I did get it, people honestly didn't think that it was me. There were some people who had their suspicions, but, like, I was so consistently not imposter that I was like, I kind of want to get the chance to play through that, like even just once. Every other round, I was constantly, oh, it's this person. Like, really almost immediately saying, oh, no, it's very clearly this person. This person is the imposter. I guarantee that. And about 9 times out of 10, I was correct.
The thing that I love, by the way, is that what really twisted the knife with you not getting the play imposter is that one of the people playing with us got it 5 times in a fucking row.
And it ended up being like the excuse of, I think it's Luke. What do you think the chances are that I got it 5 times in a row? Secret, he did. Or just, like, you know, spoilers, he did, as a matter of fact. But so, because I had spent that entire time, the only time when I didn't immediately go, it's this person, was when I was the imposter. And no one really noticed that fact, which was amusing to me. Like, I didn't immediately accuse someone else because I wasn't sure who I could believably accuse. So, the fun part of that was, I would sabotage something and then go to try and fix it, like, on the spot. And when I killed someone, I immediately reported the body. So again, I made myself as inconspicuous as possible, and I wasn't able to win, but I did have a couple of people going, for a while anyway.
Well, yeah, again, you've proven to be a good liar.
Ian, thank you very much for this. It helped brighten my days. Since I mentioned before, I'm in quarantine, a darker week, a brighter light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
I am genuinely glad if I'm able to do that for people. Like, yeah. I make content because I enjoy making content, and I stream because I enjoy streaming and chatting with people. And while the financial side of it is obligate because I live in a capitalist society, I honestly get a lot more warm fuzzies when people tell me things like, this has made a positive difference in my day, thank you for doing this. Like, knowing, especially in times like what we're living in right now, that I might have had a positive impact for someone, it puts me in a warm fuzzy space, and I'm always happy when I'm able to do that. Genuinely. OMG. I don't know how much of a delay that is, but genuinely, I am glad when I'm able to do things to brighten someone's day, because I've had that happen for me before too. And it can be a small thing as just the comfort of listening to someone else talk while you focus on something else. Like, I know how much of a benefit that can be. And if I can provide even a degree of comfort or amusement or something positive, then, you know, legitimately, I know almost everyone says that, and a lot of people do mean it, but, like, it does actually mean a lot to me as someone who previously thought I never made anyone happy, to know that might be something that I'm contributing to in some way. So, that all said, Among Us might be an option for this coming Saturday. It depends all on what other people are doing as of this Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I know I would love to have another go at it.
Of course, you enjoy killing people. Anyway.
Well, I enjoy trying to not be the worst liar in the world.
You were bad at it. No, I'm kidding. You're actually pretty convincing as a liar. The only difference is that the reason why I know it was you is, 1, I know you, and 2, there's subtle ways to tell when someone is telling the truth versus when they're lying about something. And
yeah.
it's not as easy to pick up for everyone, but anyway. I am going to cut it here because my voice is getting tired. I'm not quite getting tired, which is a really weird thing for me. I genuinely still have energy, which is probably because I think after crashing pretty badly yesterday, I got like 11 hours of sleep last night.
That'll do it.
Yeah, that'll fix a few things. So I was happy to do this, and I appreciate everyone who came by to watch today. I really thank you to people who contributed through the coffee. And obviously thank you to people, especially the patrons thus far, that have made the purchase of the adoptables. If you follow my social media, which there's usually links to it, but, you know, it's not hard to find me on Twitter either, for example. I'll probably be posting the adoptables there. Thank you! Oh, Shikarian, thank you.
Nice.
Christ, 11 hours of sleep. Yes, I appreciate the congratulations. I congratulate myself for 11 hours because that's new. But I hope that the adoptables that I do end up releasing, I think tomorrow, but soon, sometime this weekend, I think at the latest. Because again, if I can make this thing work, then I'll be doing something that I enjoy and hopefully providing for other people who will also enjoy the thing. So, nice. If you like what you've seen during this stream, keep an eye out on the social media, like Discord server and Twitter and stuff like that for when I post about these things in the future. But in the meantime, I'm going to call it here. So I do hope you guys have a good evening or morning or whatever time of day it is for you live or when you're watching this afterwards. And thank you, Griffin, for joining me.
Always a pleasure.
So I will hopefully see you guys come this Saturday. And if not, then I will hopefully see you guys sometime soon.
Take care, everyone.
Goodbye.